Live. What happened? We are live. It is the pre-show. Hi, everybody. How many minutes behind was I? Like 1 minute. I don't know what time it is. That's what happens. The time is so important when things are all based on, time. Welcome to the pre-show. This is the pre-show for the 220-1001 Core 1 A+ study group, everybody. We're doing this first hour Q&A. I'll be asking you questions from the exam objectives for the 220-1001. Let's see if I can get my mic working. There we go. It's a little nicer. Don't hear it well in my ear. That's the hard part. Let's go to the stream health because that's what's good to see. Let's pop out the chat so I can see what's going on with the chat. Hi, chat. Hey, everybody. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. We've got about 8 minutes before we get started, so bear with me, everybody. We'll get things started around here. Delicious. You could probably see me right here spraying that in my throat. Yum, yum. This is a Singer's Serious Cinnamon throat spray. That's what's going on. Hey, DC and New York City and Tampa, Mesquite, Texas. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. It's December. It's the end of the year. Can you believe this? I have so much going on right now. These things are bothering me in the back of my... Wearing long sleeves today. That's when you know it's serious. Right there. Hello, Atlanta, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, New Jersey, UK, Philly. Couple Phillies checking in. Good to have you here. No problems with any viruses here. Thank you for asking. We've been very healthy. We've been lucky. We've been very healthy throughout this entire thing. So things have gone well so far. We'll see. Is it an inevitability? We will find out, I guess, with that. Hello, Colorado and Sicily, Italy. Good to be seen. Thank you for being here. South Carolina, welcome. Ohio, Delaware's here. Thank you for being here. Alabama. We've got 1001 questions. I think I've got everything ready to go. Should probably get this one set up. There we go. What else? Let's check. Make sure we got cameras are working. Recording is going. Recording is going here. There's a lot of stuff going on in here. There's a lot of screens. How many screens are in front of me right now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I know. It was like a minute late for the pre-show, like it wasn't even going to happen. What's going on? Well, as much as I try to be punctual sometimes, that's what happens. Well, it is a 10-minute before we actually get started pre-show. So technically, as long as I'm here by the top of the hour, I feel pretty good about myself. But I was finishing up the podcast intro, which I do prior to going live. In my studio, it's not too cold in here, but I think I keep it about 73 here in the winter. Just because I can put on a jacket and it's fine. I'm usually got like a hoodie on or a skull cap or something and kind of set up this way. But most of what I do is from this vantage point. I can close the streaming side. Most of what I do is just sitting here the whole time. So as I'm writing my Security Plus content, if I'm editing video, whatever, the screens are a little different. They're on arms that move around, so I can move. These are a little bit closer to me, but for the live streams, they're pushed back because my camera would not be able to see me if I was set up differently. I think this camera's a little blurry, isn't it? It seems blurry. I have to adjust all the cameras are manually focused in here. Or it could just be my eyes. It's one of those two things. Is there any chance of me doing a Cloud Plus series? That one isn't even on the list. I usually will say, no, it's on the list. That's one of the things that I could possibly do. No, I don't know. We'll get started in about 5 minutes, 4.5 minutes. We get started with the live stream. Cloud Plus is one of those that I probably get a request every 6 months of somebody asking, hey, how about you do a Cloud Plus? It's a perfectly reasonable question for this, but this is one of those where if you're ever working through trying to figure out how much time to apply to something, these take a lot of time. So that's one of those where Cloud Plus just doesn't seem to have the viewers. But we'll see. These things are constantly in flux. They're constantly changing. The popularity is changing. The amount of people interested in certification changes all the time. And my interests change all the time. So who knows? We might end up doing something. Can you still do the SY0501? That's the Security Plus certification. Yes. The 501 is what I would recommend that you do until it retires in July 31st, 2021. So you've got 6.5 months right now on the 501. And there's actually books available. There's 0 books available for the 601 right now. So that's one of those. How often am I streaming these study group videos? Well, you can look at the event calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. You'll know exactly. I usually have the next 2 months specced out. So all of this month and January's dates are on there. So you can see how that's going. The beard's still there. Yeah. Still growing it out. As if there's a process. There's no process. There's no concept to this. Mrs. Professor Messer says, you should grow that. I go, okay. And it just grows. It's up to her to figure out the details. Do my videos count towards continuing education unit credit? Well, these certainly do in this study group. And I'll give you in the first hour instructions on how you can receive an email from me with those details. But you have to listen up during that first hour. Why not jump right to the 601? Primarily because it's 50% new content and 33% larger. So it is a harder exam to study for. Not only harder in the amount of content that you have to study, there's no books. Where are you supposed to get the 50% of new content that's in there that's not in the 501? So I don't know why. There are people, they just feel like they need to take the newest one, and I get it. But when it just gets released, you should really wait about 6 months and then study for the new one. The problem is that the 601, that's one that you're going to have to wait at least. The first books arrive in January. The rest of them kind of in March. So that's it. There are no distances of 802.11 ABC, N, and AC. It depends on the strength of the radio and the ability of your device to receive. So there are no distances. And that is not a performance-based question because it's an impossible question to answer. There you go. That was easy. Thanks for coming, everybody. No, well, we got more questions for you. How close should you schedule 1001 and 1002? You shouldn't schedule them close at all. You should study for the 1001 or the 1002 and take it, and then start studying for the other one until you're ready to take that one and then take it. There's no time frame. So that's one of those that you study until you're ready to take the exam, and that's it. After A+, should I recommend you take Network Plus or take Security Plus? You should take whatever certification allows you to get to the goals that you have for your career. That might be Network Plus. It might be Security Plus. It might be a Microsoft certification. It might be an Amazon certification. It might be a Google certification. It might be anything. But you need to, the question isn't what certification do I take next? The question is, what do I want to do in my career and how do I get there and what certification would allow me to get there? That's the question. And it's one you have to kind of reverse answer that one. Hey, it's top of the hour. Is it time? It is time. Let's do a study group, everybody. Let's see if we can figure out how this whole thing works again. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the December 2020 Professor Messer A+, Core 1, 220-1001. I had to think about it for a moment there. It's our study group for the very first Core 1 A+ exam. This is a series of live streams we do every month. If you come back in a couple days, we'll do the one for the Core 2 exam. There's always something that we'll do here in this first hour. I'm going to be asking you questions that come directly from the Core 1 exam. So I'll ask you some questions. You'll be able to participate online and answer those questions. We do these every month. If you'd like to know when we are doing these, you can always visit our website at professormesser.com/ calendar. To be able to participate today, I'm going to ask these questions. You can answer these questions online. This is kind of fun. You're able to lock in your answer. You can follow along with us by popping a new window open in your browser and browsing to this URL right here, professormesser.com/QA. Go to that browser window, go to that address bar. ProfessorMesser.com/QA will get you there. There is also an app that you can use. Go to your favorite app store, and you can get the app called the Socrative Student app. The Socrative Student app, there's a Socrative Teacher app. That's the one for me. That's not the one you want. You want the Socrative Student app. It will ask you for a room name. That room name right here on the screen is Professor Messer, all one word, ProfessorMesser, and that will get you there. Make sure you spell it right or you won't be in the right room and there won't be a question there, and that's no fun for anybody. So pop open that window. If you do that, there will be something waiting for you, a question waiting for you. We call it our rewind question. It's a question we have from last month just to see if you can get in and answer the question. That rewind question asks, a computer has been delivered to the help desk with a note that says, post failed. Which of the following would be the most likely cause of this issue? Would it be a bad RAM module? Would it be a malware infection? Would it be an incorrect video driver? Would it be the printer not connected? Or would it be a failed Windows update? Now, if you know the answer, don't answer online. You want to go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and answer there. And we're going to come back to that question in just a minute or two. Thank you for being here on our study group. As I mentioned earlier, we do one of these study groups every month for each one of the CompTIA certifications that I cover on my site, the Core 1, the Core 2 of the A+, the Network Plus, and the Security Plus. So at least 4 live streams a month. Should we do more? Should we do less? I'm open for suggestions. While I am not here doing live things, you can always enjoy our other content at ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube, where I'm putting out bunches of videos. We put 6 videos out yesterday on Security Plus. We've got tweets that you can find, your daily pop quiz question at ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter. And we also have the daily pop quiz questions in a pretty picture form at ProfessorMesser.com/Instagram. That's Instagram. So there's also other places you can go for those. ProfessorMesser.com/Facebook, ProfessorMesser.com/LinkedIn. There's all kinds of places you'll find. You just type in ProfessorMesser.com/whatever it is you would like to find. Now, if you've already earned your A+ certification or any of your CompTIA certifications, you can earn continuing education unit credit just by watching this live stream. Sometime during this first hour of the live stream, I will give you information on that. So you'll learn more about what you need to do to get an email from me about continuing education unit credit, but simply listen in sometime in this first hour. You'll be able to figure out those details. Today, we're going to talk all about the 220-1001. This is a series of 2 videos you have to pass to earn your A+ certification. These certifications were released on January 15th of 2019, so we're really kind of in the middle of their lifespan. I guess the point of this is that the 220, 1001, and 1002 are going to be here for quite some time. I estimate they will be retired based on that date, July of 2022. So you got plenty of time if you're watching this in December of 2020 to study for your A+ certifications with this version. Both of these exams are 90 minutes per exam. On the 220-1001, you have to earn a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. So of those 800 points, you need 575 points. We think that's how they do it. They don't tell us exactly how they grade everything, but that is the scale, and those are the numbers. The point is just do the best you can. If you've been studying for the previous version of this exam, that was the 900 series, they've changed it a little bit. About 21% of the 220-1001 is new topics. So the point of that is you need to make sure you are studying from materials that are specifically written for the 220-1001 and the 220-1002. Make sure you're familiar with all of those. The exam for the 1001, the questions we'll talk about today, deal with mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware network troubleshooting. So we have a few different things that we're going to describe here. Come back in a couple days. On Thursday, we have a live stream where we're doing all the core 2 topics. So we'll address those in a couple of days. I also want to let you know that if you're someone who's been on my site, every video that I make for this training course, every minute is available for you to watch for free. There's no registration. It's not behind a paywall. You can really get everything there. But I also have other things that might help you. I have course notes. I have practice exams. I have downloadable audio. I have downloadable video and things that you can take with you wherever you happen to be. And even things like an exam hacks book that gives you tips for what to do while you are taking the exam. Not really an A+ topic, but certainly can help you pass an exam. All this is available as part of my Success Bundle. You can learn about what comes in all of those different pieces on my website at professormesser.com/1001success. There's also some free questions available, my Take 10 Challenge. I plan on adding another 4 of those here this week, I think. We should have those up and running, so feel free to check back for the A+. So you should have 10 question practice tests are available at my site, professormesser.com/take10. That will get you there, and free questions. It's really an archive of the things that we do on this live stream, because every month I create new questions. So I take the old ones, I put them in the top in the Take 10. So that might help you as you're going through those, figuring out the deals with what's available. This study group, the video version is available for immediate replay. As soon as we're done, it's available on YouTube. There's also a podcast version of this, an audio-only podcast version. You can subscribe to this or even listen at professormesser.com/podcast. They have podcast links for the A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus as well. Also let you know, if you are watching this on the YouTube replay, there is a set of timestamps created by Lori, my marketing manager, who's having to watch this replay. Hi, Lori. Everybody say hi to Lori. And if you're someone who likes these timestamps, make sure you tell her in the chat as she's watching this. She's watching the chat go by too. And she says hi to everybody. This is one where you can very quickly click on the timestamp and go to exactly what you're looking for in the video. Can really, really help if you're trying to find something very, very quickly on all of those replays. I also have my course notes available. We'll show you more about these in a moment. The course notes themselves have every bit of text and graphics from my courses. In fact, I think I have one here to show very quickly, just so you're familiar with my course notes. Here they are. These are both available in a PDF and a format that is physical. And so I just take all of the text and all the graphics and everything from all of my videos, and I put them right into these course notes. And if you get the physical version, I send you the digital one for free. You can see it's beautiful, full color graphics. It's a nice, high quality document. That's available at professormesser.com/1001notes. Okay, enough of the introduction. Let's talk about that question we had earlier, a rewind question. A computer has been delivered to the help desk with a note that says, "Post failed. Which of the following would be the most likely cause of this issue? Would it be a bad RAM module, a malware infection, an incorrect video driver, the printer not connected, or a failed Windows update?" 88% of you feel very strongly that it is a bad RAM module. That is a pretty big majority of you saying, yes, this is what this is. Whenever you turn on a computer and it simply beeps at you, that is a failure of the power on self-test, or the post. That power on self-test is a very quick diagnostic. It tests sort of a high-level perspective of the critical components of your system. It checks and makes sure the video is working, that your keyboard is connected, that there is a RAM module that's working properly, that it can at least start things up. It's not a comprehensive set of tests. It's not going to go through every part of every section of your memory to make sure that the RAM modules are functioning the way you would want. We have other types of diagnostics we can run for that. But just to get running, the post, it really checks those. If there's a problem, it will put a message on the screen. Unless your problem is with the video, then it can't put a message on the screen. It'll just beep at you, and it gives a set of beep codes that are different depending on the manufacturers of the motherboard. You can check your information to make sure that it is on your motherboard to make sure it's working properly. They'll tell you what all the beep codes mean too. Those beep codes are not something you need to memorize. You need to really focus on understanding what a post is and what happens if it fails. You don't have to know the details of any of those other pieces. Power on self-test, that is the problem. So of all of the things we have listed here, a bad RAM module, a malware infection, an incorrect video driver, a printer not connected, or a failed Windows update, the only one that really fits with this is A, the bad RAM module. The 88% of you got that one absolutely right for all of those. For those of you in the chat room, if you're having problems with seeing the video, or you'd like to adjust the way the video is being presented to you, just click that cog wheel at the bottom. You can adjust how much of the resolution is there. That might help you out. Everything looks great on this side. So I'm sending it to YouTube. The problem is between you and YouTube if you're having a problem. Well, that is our rewind question. Now you can kind of see the process. You understand what to do. Just stay on that screen. I will present to you the next question. And the first new question that we're about to have, every month I do a performance-based question. This is a question that is not multiple choice. It is a fill in the blank. It's a matching question. It's a question where you have a scenario. Maybe you have drag and drop or things that you have to do. I do a new performance-based question every month. This is our performance-based question I have here. This is more of a fill in the blank. I was going to make this one matching, but I decided to make it a little more difficult. And for those of you that don't know, you get a handful of these performance-based questions when you start your exam. So if you go into this exam and you click start, and you suddenly realize, wait, these are not the multiple choice questions I was expecting. That's right. There's a handful of these at the beginning. So you might get 3 to 5 to 7 of these. You can choose to skip over them and come back. Just make sure you check your time on these. Or you can just simply start all the way through as we go. We're going to start at the very beginning. We can't skip through these. We have to start. So let's start with our performance-based question of the month, which asks, very simply, identify the interface. This isn't going to help very much for you folks that are listening in on the podcast side. This is more of a graphical, a visual daily double, if you will. But the key to this one is that there are 4 separate interfaces on the screen, interface A, B, C, and D, and I want you to tell me what they are. This is one, as I mentioned, it could have been a matching. This would have been a good matching. I probably would have put up 7 different options, and you would have had to figure out of those 7 which 4 these are. But I didn't want to give you that much information. I wanted you to be able to look at those and simply tell me what A, B, C, and D are. They're all different, obviously. So there are 4 answers I'm looking for here. What type of interface is A? What type of interface is B? What type of interface is C? What type of interface is D? So this is the interface, not necessarily the signal that's running over the interface, but it is certainly, I'll accept pretty much anything though that comes close. How about that? That works well. That's not the same type of situation you will get on the exam. The exam does not exactly do that, but you can kind of understand the perspective of those as you go through it anyway. Now, if you think you know the answer, the key is to answer on the link you have there, professormesser.com/QA. Please don't answer in the chat room. That's our number 1 rule. No answers in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer there. See if you can work through all of those. A lot of you are watching these come in because this is a fill in the blank. We can't really see a summary of the answers coming in, but a lot of you are doing very, very well with this one. The first one's kind of this big interface. That one seems like one a lot of people are getting. The last one is not. The ones in the middle are kind of going back and forth over this. So we're going to figure out what these happen to be as we go through them. I'm going to give you a couple more minutes, not a couple more minutes, a couple more seconds to go through these. Then we're going to go through each one of these interfaces and figure out what they are. Now, I realize these are not actual pictures of interfaces. They're more of this this graphic, kind of a cartoony looking view of the interface. So I realize that does add a little bit of complexity to it, but not unlike the graphics you might get on an actual exam, by the way. Let's step through each one of these and see how you did with identifying these interfaces. We have interface A, interface B, interface C, and interface D. We'll start with A, which I think these pictures are pretty much to scale, actually. They're pretty close, as close as they really could be. So yeah, these are to scale. These are pretty close to it anyway. Let's start with A though. A is a kind of an obvious one. A is a got all these pins in it. It's got this weird format, and practically everybody identified that as a DVI interface. If you wanted to be particular, a DVI-I is, in fact, some of you did mention a DVI-I dual link interface. That integrated DVI provides the ability to send both analog and digital signals on that particular interface. You don't often see people doing that. Most of the DVI these days is all digital. People are just digital. That's what you want to run on their video links anyway. So if you answer just DVI, I'll take that. That's pretty good to have that there. Answer B. B is one you have to kind of think of what's on the inside of your computer on the motherboard. That would be a SATA connector. So a little different than the type of SATA connection you would see on a storage device, but that L shape is very commonly seen on those internal SATA connectors on the inside of your computer. So if you pull open a desktop and have a look at it, that's what's there. That's SATA link. On number C, the third one on our list is a video connector, and you can kind of see this little connection, this little line on the side, the diagonal that's on the corner there really does identify that as DisplayPort. That is what you would be looking for on that DisplayPort connector. The only thing it doesn't show is those horrible connector, the lock that snaps into the DisplayPort. DisplayPort, most of them will have a locking mechanism on there, so you can't easily pull it out of the connection. That's the thing that always bothers people with HDMI, is that it's so easy to pull out an HDMI. Well, with DisplayPort, there's a lock built into it. If you aren't careful, I have seen cases where people just pulled too hard trying to get it out, not realizing there was simply a button on the connector itself that would unlock it, where they could pull it out to have that there. And D, last one there, is a USB-C connector. And of course, you can send all kinds of signals over USB-C. There, USB-C could be a connection for actual USB signals, but you could send Thunderbolt over USB-C, for example. USB-C Thunderbolt connections is what I'm using on my system that's in here. So everything you're seeing here is that USB-C type connection. We're going to, of course, see more and more USB-C. You're starting to see it really roll out pretty widely. USB-C, very common to see that there. This is one where if you're ever trying to figure out on these connectors, the USB-C, what is inside of that, sometimes you do have to look at the documentation. Just because it's a USB-C connector doesn't mean that it's sending a particular USB signal or a particular other type of signal. Could be not even sending Thunderbolt, or it might be sending a different Thunderbolt type. You can't tell from the interface what happens to be going with the signal that the interface is sending. So it's one of those that as we learn more about the USB-C and we send more types of different signals over it, you have to do a little more research on your side to have that there. Those are the interfaces. I realize they are sometimes difficult to figure out based on a graphic like this, but there will be times on your exam when you might see something similar. So this might help you as you go through all of those. That is our performance-based question of the month. Well done with that. I like the answers that we got through with that one either. Let's shift gears and look at some multiple choice-based questions. I have one for you that asks this question. A monitor continues to display an image on the screen after the computer is turned off. Which of the following would describe this issue? Would that be artifacts, dead pixels, an incorrect video driver, hardware acceleration, or burn-in? Would it be artifacts, dead pixels, incorrect video driver, hardware acceleration, or burn-in? If you think you know the answer, do not answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer right there. A monitor continues to display an image on the screen after the computer is turned off. Which of the following would describe that issue? That's your link, professormesser.com/QA. Go to that and lock it in. Video troubleshooting, really troubleshooting in general, is a big section of the exam. There is a significant number of questions you're going to get that will ask you to go through a set of troubleshooting steps. Some of it is related to operating systems, some of it's relating to hardware, some of it relating to displaying information on a screen, some of it with mobile devices. There's a very wide-ranging amount of hardware on the 1001, the Core 1 exam. So make sure you're familiar with those as you are doing your studies. You get people come out of this exam saying, there were a lot more troubleshooting questions than I was expecting. The troubleshooting section is a pretty big percentage. And in some ways, I think the exam topics that are in the non-troubleshooting section sometimes have the feel of troubleshooting. There is a difference on the exam, but it's subtle. And it seems like the whole exam is just full of scenarios and configurations and troubleshooting. Yeah, you do a lot of troubleshooting. You do a lot of thinking about how to fix a problem on the exam. You get very few trivia questions on the exam. And by trivia question, I mean USB stands for, and you're expected to type in Universal Serial Bus or something. No, you don't get anything like that as you're working through there. So it's not any of these situations where you're going to find a definition or you have to tell the exam what the acronym stands for. You're never going to get that. That is not something you will ever see. So don't spend your time memorizing things just to memorize them. There are a few things you have to memorize, but not from a trivia perspective. People always talk about the port numbers on the Core 1. Well, it's because it comes up in troubleshooting questions, not because they're going to ask you what is the port number used for web browsing. They're not really going to ask you for that. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, a monitor continues to display an image on the screen after the computer is turned off. Which of the following would describe this issue? Is it artifacts, dead pixels, incorrect video driver, hardware acceleration, or burn-in? And 85% of you say it's burn-in is the answer. It's not artifacts, which for some reason it has an odd set of questions that I've seen around that. Definitely not artifacts. Artifacts would be splotchy things or corruption that you might see on your screen. It's not dead pixels, where pixels simply aren't lighting up. It's not an incorrect video driver. The computer's turned off, your video driver doesn't apply here. And a hardware acceleration is a capability of the adapter card. Again, if your computer is turned off, the hardware acceleration doesn't apply. What we're talking about here is problems with the image and the way it's burned in. This is what you would see here. For burn-in, it's very common to have this particular kind of problem. This is where you would see that on the screen, there were things that were there. Let's see, I have a better picture of burn-in right here. This is from an airport. And you can see that, for instance, they changed the format of when something was on time. And you can kind of see this very faint on time to the right side, because obviously on time is something that does happen more often than not, amazingly, in these situations. So you can see that it's still there. It's just burned into the screen. That's never going to go away on this particular screen. Although it was very, very common on the older CRTs, you still see it on LCD displays as well. So it's one of those things you really do have to work for to make sure that you're not going to run into that. Most of you are familiar with this. You've probably seen this before. Burn-in, 86% of you chose burn-in. That is the right answer. That's the one that if you've powered everything down, you're still seeing something on the screen, you're definitely in trouble. Fortunately, with an LCD, in some cases, you can have it send a signal to the screen, maybe an all white or all black, and you can have it start removing some of that so it doesn't burn in and kind of remove that burn in. So hopefully that's something you can work through as well. Well done with that one. Let's do another multiple choice question. I have this one is going to talk about synchronization. The question asks, which of the following would be used to synchronize information from an iOS device to iCloud? Would that be USB Type A, Lightning, 802.11, USB-C, or USB Micro B? The question again, which of the following would be used to synchronize information from an iOS device to iCloud? Would it be USB Type A, Lightning, 802.11, USB-C, or USB Micro B? Those are your possible possible answers for the question. If you think you know the answer, Go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Have all of those there. Whenever you start going through these questions, make sure you parse the questions out to figure out what these might be. You want to figure out, what are you trying to accomplish? What is the scenario? What do you have available to accomplish it with? And then what do you do to make that thing happen? This is a very common thing on the exam, is that they give you a subset of pieces of information. They give you a scenario, and then you have to put it together based on that. What I really recommend you not do is don't read more into the question than what's there. I often think that whenever you start looking at these questions, sometimes you try to read more of a story in. Well, maybe what they're doing is this. Don't do that. Just simply read what's in the question. It's a standalone question. It's a finite amount of information. If they thought more information was required for you to answer it, they would have given you more information. These are very specific questions, and they're not tricky questions, and they're not questions that are badly written, but they're very focused on giving you exactly what you need to answer it, and everything is there in these questions to answer it. So that's what you should do with this one as well, is think about what is there and go through the other pieces of that to figure it out. So that's one you should absolutely do. This might be useful, how to be able to work through this. Another thing you should also do if you're working on this online, or you're trying to figure out lock your question in, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We'll figure out the details. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, which of the following would be used to synchronize information from an iOS device to iCloud? Would you use USB type A? Would you use Lightning? Would you use 802.11? Would you use USB-C? Or would you use USB micro B? Very often when we think about Apple devices, we get focused on the connections and the proprietariness of some of the connectivity. But we were talking about a very specific kind of synchronization that 54% of you said you would use 802.11, 41% of you said you would use Lightning. These are, in this particular scenario, one that you really do have to work through and figure out the details with. Only 3% said USB type A, only 1% said USB-C, only 0% of you did not even make the difference, is the USB micro B. So we have to think about how you would get data synchronized to the cloud. And this is the real key. iCloud is all in the cloud. It's over the network. And there are so many different ways. On an older iOS device, you might have the older 30-pin connector, which you see here just under my head. The USB-C is the newer connector you start to see on a number of different devices these days. You have also, for connectivity to iCloud, 802.11 wireless, or the existing mobile network, your cellular provider network, for example. Anytime you're communicating to the cloud, you have to communicate over the network. And if you are doing that, you'll need a network type connection. One of the most common to do that with is the 802.11 wireless and the mobile network connection. You would not plug in a cable to communicate to iCloud. Really, the only time these days you plug in a cable to an iOS device is to be able to connect it directly to a computer to transfer files or to back up the data onto macOS or Windows using either the built-in capabilities in the latest macOS or the iTunes that's available on the Windows side. Very useful to have that functionality there. And if you, by the way, if you have an iOS device and you are not synchronizing to iCloud, that's something you really do need to consider doing. It simply takes everything that's on your iPhone or your iPad, synchronize it, or your Mac for that matter, synchronizes it out to iCloud. If anything happens to these devices, you simply turn on the new device and it downloads everything and you're back up and running instantly. I back up everything on my mobile device. That way, if my mobile device breaks, if I lose it, if it falls somewhere, I can purchase a new one painfully and then click a button, and an hour later, everything is back as if nothing ever happened. It's like magic. You should really take advantage of that if you have that available. It's one of those things. If you're on Android, same thing, but you're synchronizing to the Google Cloud. So make sure if you have these mobile devices that you are doing that. So important to make sure you have all of this data, all your contacts, all your emails, all your pictures, all your videos. These are things that you can't recover from. If they're gone forever, and you never want that to happen. So that's the answer we were looking for here, is to be able to use the 802.11 connection. That is the one we wanted, to be able to synchronize information from an iOS to iCloud. If mobile network was on here, that would have been an option as well. It would not have been Lightning because you're plugging in a cable for the Lightning connection. That's not how you connect to iCloud. That's how you charge. That's how you can connect to a local computer, but it does not connect to an iCloud that way. You have to really pick through all of those different pieces to figure that out. Make sure you're familiar with the process of synchronizing data in Android and iOS. That absolutely is part of the exam objectives. Let's do another one. We have another multiple choice question that asks, and this is one where you do have to think about it. What port would most likely be used to transfer email to a mobile device? What port would most likely be used to transfer email to a mobile device? Would that be TCP 80, TCP 143, TCP 3389, TCP 548, or TCP 389? Those are your 5 possible answers. Which port would most likely be used to transfer email to a mobile device? Would it be TCP 80, TCP 143, TCP 3389, TCP 548, or TCP 389? Yeah, this is one I think applies not to just A+, but yes, there are some Network Plus connections in here. Might even also help you with Security Plus for that matter. By the time you get to Security Plus, it's expected you should know these things anyway. So I guess it would help you along those lines for all of those. Lock in your answer by visiting professormesser.com/QA. Get it all locked in. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. This is as close as I could get to a trivia question, but it isn't one because it is a multiple step question. You have to know what is a transferring email to a mobile device. How do you do that? And then once you figure out how to do that, what port would you use based on the ports I made available to you? Because there are many different ways to transfer email to a mobile device. Lots of different ways. I have all video on all the different ways to do it, but only one of the available answers will match one of those many different ways. So see if you happen to know what this one, plus the answer is asking you which one of those would most likely be used. This is one of those scenarios where you do have to pick the most likely one for all of those pieces. See if you happen to know what those are and as they are going through. Lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock those in. You'll figure out the details of that. Hopefully you're familiar with those. It's the first big section of the networking section are those port numbers. The only thing I can kind of tell you about that is I always hear a lot of people spending more than the normal amount of time memorizing port numbers. And the only thing I can really tell you on the exam is you will never be asked about a single topic a bunch of times. If it comes up once or twice and then you're done. You've got so many topics to cover that you should never be spending days on a topic to figure out the details of that. It's not going to help you ultimately. You could have been studying something else during that time frame and been much farther ahead of the game. So your study strategy should figure along those lines as well. The question asks, what port would most likely be used to transfer email to a mobile device? Is it TCP 80, TCP 143, TCP 3389, TCP 548, or TCP 389? 73% of you said TCP 143. Another group of you, 13%, said TCP 80. And then single digits, 6% said 3389, 5% said 548, and 3% said 389. So whenever you start getting into the details of this and trying to figure it out, the first thing you need to do is figure out what are the different ways to transfer mail. One of them is via IMAP. IMAP is probably one of the most common ways to transfer mail because it is so flexible. You can send message or receive messages with this when you change IMAP and modify an email. You delete it. It not only deletes it on your mobile device, it deletes it on the IMAP server and therefore synchronizes on all of your devices. A lot of us, for example, we carry around, we have a mobile device, we have a smartphone, maybe we have a tablet, maybe we have a computer that we're on, and we're using all of them all the time. You know, if you're out of your office, maybe it's your smartphone you have with you. If you're at home, maybe you have a tablet in front of you. Maybe while you're at work, you have the computer in front of you. The IMAP protocol allows you to really synchronize from all of those. Really nice to have there. And one of the most common ways to do this, the most common port numbers used to do this, is over TCP port 143. That is IMAP 4, the version 4 of IMAP, what we just these days call IMAP, to be able to have that there. That is one of the port numbers that would be used for IMAP, and therefore port 143, the 74% of you getting that one absolutely right. That is why you got that one absolutely right on those port numbers. Well done with that. Whenever I start going through and figuring out the details of this, and as I mentioned, memorizing port numbers is not what you should be doing. You should be memorizing what port numbers do. That is a very significant difference in these things. Don't memorize port numbers. Memorize what the port numbers are doing. I think that's probably the most important thing you should think about as you go through this. So port 80, I guess you could say, and I was thinking this as I was telling you about how to go through the thought process of this question. 12% of you said TCP 80. That's generally what we consider to be web traffic. Well, if you use Gmail, if you use Yahoo, that's web traffic, except in 100% of those cases, it's not going to run over port 80 because port 80 commonly sends non-encrypted web traffic. If you're using an email over a web service provider's network like Google Mail, Yahoo Mail, or others, then you're using TCP port 443 for HTTPS. So that's why I mentioned that and being able to have that there. That's one of those scenarios where it does make sense to have TCP 143. Would TCP port 993 be better? Well, no, because it's not one of the available answers. This is one of those scenarios where you do have to think about this. Port 143 commonly used for IMAP, but commonly 143 we associate with non-encrypted IMAP, although these days we really are sending encrypted over it as well. It's just a port number. We can send whatever over it we want. So some of the encrypted or secure ports would be a better option were they available. So were they available is the really important question to have that there. That's not listed in our list of things. You had to pick the most likely based on the available. And that's the real challenge a lot of people have with this, is what is the most likely question given what's available. And given all the options we have, TCP port 143 is the best one to use. It would not be LDAP. It would not be 3389 for remote desktop. It would not be port 80. So the other ports are used for other services very commonly, not used for email. The only one used for email is 143, although it is sometimes associated with non-encrypted. That's the best option for receiving email on a mobile device. That is what you would use for all of that. What if port 25 was an option, but it was not? And that's the real key. So if another port was available that created a conflict, it wouldn't be a very good question, now would it? So I wrote a question where there really was a very specific answer for this. And I used very general terms, transferring email. Only one of these would transfer emails over that connection. That is the best option, TCP 143, and 74% of you got it right. You were absolutely correct with that. There's so many and varied questions on this exam, and they are written in a very specific style that a lot of people, when they take the exam, they say this exam, the questions they had their own way of talking to you. They had their own voice. And one of the things I started to hear from a lot of people is that it was as much understanding the way they asked the question as it was knowing the content itself. And I realized there weren't a lot of really good practice exams out there that emulated this style, that got you thinking in the way that they talk at CompTIA. So I sat down and wrote from scratch my own original questions that had the same style. I tried to emulate the way that they talk. And I created 3 separate practice exams that have multiple choice performance-based questions in them. So they have 5 performance-based questions at the beginning, and the rest of the 85 questions are multiple choice. Now I've got 3 sets of those. I have tried to put this into a format that would really give you a perspective of an actual exam. Plus I added some other things to it because I published this as a PDF. It's available in both a digital form and it's available as a physical form. There's the actual practice exams book that you can purchase when you get the physical version and get the digital one for free. Here is a question from the digital version of the book. Let's go through this one. The question asks, the printer in the accounting department has stopped all printing processes. The print queue shows that there are 7 jobs in the queue that are waiting to be printed. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Would it be A, send the test job to the printer and move it to the top of the queue? Would it be B, restart the printer's spooler? Would it be C, install an updated version of the printer driver? Would it be D, delete everything in the queue and resend the print jobs? So you've got now options to choose from these. And as we go through all of this, you can go through my book. This is page 14 of my book. You can jump to page 31 for the quick answer or jump to page 39 for the details. Well, instead of scrolling to page 39, I've just put links in here for you. So you can click on the details. It takes you to page 39 where the question is and says the answer is B, restart the printer spooler. And for every single one of these, I give you an explanation of why this was the right answer. But my problem with a lot of these practice exams is I never answer the right answer, and it doesn't tell me why I got it wrong. So in my practice exam book, I list out every single one of the incorrect answers, and for each of the incorrect answers, I tell you why that answer was not the correct one. So you can go through all of this, and with all of these answers, all of these answers, you understand now, well, if you chose C, install an updated version of the printer driver, it tells you why that wasn't the best answer to choose from. Also, at the end of that, once you go through all of those answers, I tell you what video the question is associated with. So if you wanted to go back and do some review, you can either click the link that's in here that will take you directly to my website to have that there, or you can, in fact, you can do this right now with your phone. Bring up the camera on your phone, just point it at the screen. You don't have to take a picture. Point it at the screen. It'll see the QR code, and then it will take you with that QR code over to the page on my website that has that video. So that you can, if you got the printed version of this, you can use it in conjunction with your mobile device, your smartphone, your tablet, and still be able to watch the videos at the same time. Once you're done with that, you can either click the back button in your browser or in your PDF reader. I have the back button right here on the top of my screen. It takes me back to that question. I can go to the next one. So you can step through every single question that way if you want to. That's my practice exams. That's what I put together. They don't expire. It's a PDF. It's like a book. You're purchasing a PDF. I did it in a PDF format because that's the format that the largest number of people would be able to use. I wanted everyone to have access to these, no matter what. It doesn't matter if you're using iOS. Doesn't matter if you're using Android. Doesn't matter if you're using a Kindle. Doesn't matter. It's a PDF reader. So it allows you to really do that. And as I mentioned, you can get it both in digital and physical formats. Available on my website, professormesser.com/core1pe. So that's one of those situations. If the question in the chat room, so if you weren't familiar with the print spooler, because this was a print spooler problem, would it give a detail on the topic? It gives you the link to the video that then talks about the details of this particular question, which of course talk about the print spooler. So if you're some of the topics in here you weren't familiar with, you can always go to the video, learn more about those topics, and then you can understand the context of the question every single time. That's why we focused that way. This was a really important thing for me so that you would have the best possible practice exams. These are the practice exams I wish I had when I was working towards this. Learn more at professormesser.com/core1pe. Let's do some more practice questions ourselves since we are in the study group. And let's go through the next one on our list, which asks, what type of data redundancy relies solely on the duplication of data across physical drives? Is that RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, or RAID 10? The question again, what type of data redundancy relies solely on the duplication of data across physical drives? Is that RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, or RAID 10? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answers. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We will figure this out as we go. This is one where you kind of have to know your RAID. The answers is RAID 0, 1, 5, and 10. So you have to know RAID to be able to get there. This is one also that I think as you go through understanding RAID, that each one of these has a little bit of nuance in it. This is one where I think that RAID is one of these things you do have to know. There's an entire video on RAID that goes through each one of them. And by the way, the RAID piece of it is, I think, one that does apply quite nicely to Network Plus, Security Plus, and other things as well. So once you know this, it's really going to help you. No, I'm not going to do a mobile app commercial at this point. I don't do mobile app commercials, so you'll never hear that from me. I'll talk about what objective this is on the exam in just a moment, and you'll learn about this. In fact, I'll explain it to you in just a moment, and you'll know exactly what video it comes from as well to have this. Yeah, some of you watch some of those videos. No, we're not. I don't do VPN commercials. I don't do mobile app commercials. They send me emails all the time, but no thank you. Not going to happen for it. We got enough to do. I'd rather do another question in the chat and in the study group rather than doing some of those things. So, of course, we can work on this. Read through the question, though. This one is very specific. I wrote it very specifically. What type of data redundancy relies solely on the duplication of data across physical drives? Only one of these matches this then. Is it RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, or RAID 10? Lock it down by going to professormesser.com/QA. Let's see how you did with this one. Let's see. Of all those four answers, 61% was the winner with RAID 1, 18% RAID 5, 12% RAID 0, and then 8% said RAID 10. This is one where you do have to understand the nuances of those four types. And I think for your exam, it's important to know the nuances as well. The one that we were looking for this particular question is one that would mirror the traffic between separate physical drives. That type of RAID is RAID 1. That is why we call RAID 1 mirroring. You effectively have one physical drive, and then you take that physical drive and you duplicate it exactly onto another physical drive. The beauty of this, of course, is if you lose a drive, you still have all the data. It's right there. You have an exact copy of the data all the time for this, to have those pieces in there. That's why, as you look through this, if you're in the chat room, there's a conversation going on right now about cost, about RAID, and is it costly? Well, if you have a single drive with data on it and you want to run RAID 1, you need to buy another drive exactly the same size so that you can, at least the same size, so that you can have a copy of it, a mirror of it. So you could say that your storage costs for RAID 1 are twice as much as not running RAID 1 because you have to buy two drives instead of buying one drive. Now, these days, RAID tends to describe, or we tend to call RAID a redundant array of independent disks. That's what we call it now. Originally, we called it a redundant array of inexpensive disks. And that was back in the day where you had a type of storage that was on a mainframe where the storage was incredibly expensive. And then these PCs came along and you could run things on a single computer that was at your desk, and it costs a few $1,000s. That's so inexpensive when compared to a mainframe. But now we have a different perspective of what is expensive and not expensive. And so we now just call them independent disks, is what the RAID stands for. What's beautiful about RAID 1, very redundant. You can lose an entire drive. In fact, I have gone into a client's server environment before, and we were there to upgrade the network, but we go into the server, and the server had a failure of a drive, but they had RAID 1 running on that server, and the drive failed months ago, but nobody knew it. They had no idea the drive was failed because they were running RAID 1. All of the data was completely duplicated. It was on the other drive, and they were just running on that single drive. Now, obviously, during that time frame, while they were running on the single drive, if that single drive failed, well, then they would have been in trouble. They would have been out of business. But because they were running RAID 1, everything continued to run and worked perfectly. The redundancy capabilities were exactly what you would expect from that. RAID 1 is the right answer here because we wanted to rely solely on the duplication of data across physical drives. RAID 0 provides no redundancy. You're not striping, you're not mirroring, there's no redundancy. RAID 0 is zero redundancy. That's how you would think about that. RAID 1, I guess there's striping but no mirroring. It's a way to think about that. No redundancy. Before I get your cards and letters, I've just corrected myself. RAID 1 is mirroring. We talked about that one. RAID 5 is striping with parity. So striping with parity means that there's some redundancy there as well. And so I'd originally written this as what type of data redundancy relies on the duplication of data across physical drives. That would have been RAID 1 or RAID 5 or even RAID 10 to be able to do that. So I realized, well, this isn't a very good question because there's three possible answers. How can I change this? Let's put solely. The only thing about this that provides the redundancy is the fact that there's data duplicated across physical drives, which means we're not doing any type of parity. Therefore, RAID 1 would be the only answer there. So very important, these questions and the way they are worded. It's pretty important for your exam as well. There's specific words in there you have to watch for and be able to have that. And that's why RAID 1 is the right answer on this one. 64% of you chose RAID 1, and that is why. RAID 5, as I mentioned, is striping with parity. RAID 0 is your striping. RAID 1, 0, 1 plus 0, or RAID 10, depending on where you see it written and how you see it written. Sometimes you see it written as RAID 0, 1, not technically the same thing, but close enough. Is striping, but it's mirrored striping. It's parity with mirroring, if you will. It is a nice way to provide redundancy with even more drives, but it's a combination of striping with some mirroring going on. So RAID 1, 0, you have to know all four of those. There are other RAID types. Obviously, we're skipping around RAID 0, 1, 5, and 10. There's some in the middle there. But as far as your exam is concerned, we're really talking about only knowing 0, 1, 5, and 10 because that's what's in the exam objectives. Don't go outside the objectives. That's what we're talking about. So things like RAID 6, a completely legitimate RAID type, not in the exam objectives. RAID 4, completely legitimate RAID type, not in the exam objectives. Stick to the exam objectives. Always know it's there. That's what we're talking. By solely, I mean the only way. That's what that stands for. That's what that means. What type of data redundancy is used only with the duplication data across physical drives? That's what that means. There's no programming here. There's no coding. There's no open source. I'm not sure where that came from. No. Let's do another question. We got time. By the way, if you're watching this for continuing education unit credit, I will send you a digitally signed email if you follow these instructions. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link. Click the Contact Us link. In there, we'll ask for your name, your email address. Make sure the email address is correct because I'm emailing this to you. There's a subject line. If you would put in there, this is the December Core 1 study group. And then in the body of the message on a line by itself, please put the super secret code word of the month, redundancy. Redundancy. is the super secret code word of the month. And then if you want to put anything else in that message, because I do read through every single one of these, you're more than welcome to put anything else in there. But if you put that right at the top, that super secret code word of redundancy right at the top on a line by itself, it sure helps me a lot. Don't hide it in a sentence somewhere, or don't put it at the bottom. I might miss it. So if I could just say redundancy 3 more times, is that what you want me to do? Sometimes people ask, what was the code word again? I don't know. I completely missed it. I have those things there. That's your process. It takes me about a week to turn these around. Don't worry that you're not getting a response from me in an hour. And there's no need to reply back in an hour asking where your email is. It takes me about a week. You'll be spending a lot of time trying to figure out where now, if you need it quickly, I realize sometimes people, they need these done because it's all expiring tomorrow and they're compiling it at the last minute. Just tell me and I can get it to you quickly. So we'll do that. Subject line, just put that it's the Core 1 December study group. Just anything I can recognize that this is where it came from helps me find it a little faster. I go through these manually, and then it builds an email for me, so it helps if I'm able to see some of those things a little better. I know we're at the top of the hour. Let's squeeze in one more question, though. I think we can fit one more into this list. This question asks, which type of service can be used to provide pre-built desktops for end users? Is that VDI, UEFI, DHCP, GPT, or UPnP? Which type of service can be used to provide pre-built desktops for end users? Is it VDI, UEFI, DHCP, GPT, or UPnP? Oof, a lot of abbreviations there. If you think you know the answer, please no answering in the chat room. You want to go to professormester.com/QA and lock in your answer. Do I not use regular expressions to find emails for this? Well, I don't get that many. I do manually see them come into my inbox. They are marked a certain way, but I manually then send them off to a separate folder just to make sure I don't miss anybody. And I like to read through. If anybody has urgency, I like to be able to make sure I get the urgent ones. But then they sit in a folder, and then I have a macro program on Mac OS that I use for this that is incredible. Has saved me hours and hours and hours of time. The program is called, so I don't get the name wrong, Keyboard Maestro. Now, if you're running Mac OS and you're not using Keyboard Maestro, you're wasting your time somewhere. You can automate the world with Keyboard Maestro, and to be able to have that. That's what you should do to have those pieces there. It's a remarkable program because once I see everything works out and I see what it is, I can hit one button, say that this is for the December A+ study group, Core 1, and then it reformats your email, does some regular expression matches, pulls out your name, pulls out your email address, pulls out a bunch of stuff, reformats it, puts it into an email format that then adds a digital signature, and then I look it over and make sure it's okay, and I just hit send. So it's very quick in the way that it operates. It's very useful to have too. If you're ever someone who's trying to automate things in Mac OS, Keyboard Maestro is a great way to do it, and have all those pieces there. Very, very useful to have it. Hopefully that can help you as well. I don't really, I don't use Windows as a common desktop, so I don't do a ton of automation in Windows, but I'm sure there's other options for that as well to be able to put those there. That might be one of those. To have that capability. And let's see how you did with this one. What type of service can be used to provide pre-built desktops for end users? The possible answers again: VDI, UEFI, DHCP, GPT, and UPnP. 5 really interesting, very different, diverse answers here. 61% of you say that's VDI. We have 14% said UEFI and 13% said UPnP. So effectively a two-way tie for second place and a two-way tie for third between DHCP and GPT. Well, I guess in this case, we sort of need to know what all these different acronyms mean. And I think that would really help you on this one for the acronyms. For example, this one, by the way, for each one of these, for those of you that were asking, I always put the video that is associated with the question at the bottom of every screen. So this one comes from section 4.1 Cloud Services, and you'll notice there's a QR code on every one of these explanation slides that takes you to the video. So those are added here in the last few months. So you can go back through this video if you want to, and you can find all those QR codes to have all of that. Is end user another word for customer in this question? No, it's a word for end user. Is that good? I didn't think that part was the most confusing part of this. End user is the person who is the user who is who is using your service. So that is an end user. Maybe that is a term that's not used other places. I don't know. But VDI is a virtual desktop infrastructure. And I demonstrate this in the video where I have built, there's a great service in Amazon, for example, that I'm using here, which is the Amazon Workspaces, where I simply told Amazon, build me Windows. And it built it and sent me an email and said, here, just use this program to connect to it, which is their remote desktop program effectively. And I remote desktop in, and boom, I've got a Windows desktop just sitting there in the cloud-based, cloud-hosted virtual desktop infrastructure. So you could create 100 computers in there, simply give your users the remote access software to connect to it, which is available in Mac OS and Android and iOS and Windows and everything else. And then you can just tell the user, click on this, and now you're connected to your desktop, and it's in the cloud. So you could be anywhere. You could be at home. You could be at work. You could be at the beach. You could be anywhere and be able to use this fantastic technology, virtual desktop infrastructure, or VDI. That's what we were looking for here, is the VDI piece of this. That's why the 61% of you said VDI, the virtual desktop infrastructure. 13% of you said UEFI. That is a type of BIOS that is not used to provide pre-built desktops for end users. The BIOS is a basic input-output system that starts up your system. Make sure that it's able to boot an operating system, for example. UPnP, a universal plug-and-play, is a functionality that allows you or your operating system to manually, or automatically rather, configure network settings and other parameters on your devices. So you could, for instance, have UPnP set up so that when you started a certain application on your computer, it opened up a port number on your router. This is why we usually have UPnP disabled, because if that sounds like a bad idea, you're right. It, generally speaking, is sort of a bad idea. So that's why we often tell people, don't use universal plug and play. There's a reason that we made it, and now that's a bad reason that we made it. So a very specific reason, I guess. You would really, really, really want to need to use it for something to be able to enable that. DHCP, the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, is what's used to automatically configure IP addresses on a device, not used to provide pre-built desktops for end users. And GPT, the GUID partitioning table type, that is one that is a formatting type for partitions on a drive. That is not a way to provide pre-built desktops for end users. So the only one here that really makes sense is a VDI. This is really a test to see if you knew your acronyms. VDI is the right answer. 62% of you chose VDI, and you got that one absolutely right. That is the right answer to have these. All the questions we went through today, by the way, came directly from the exam objectives. I didn't make up any of this. All of those terms, all of the acronyms, all the things we went through are in the objectives. If you don't have the objectives, you're doing yourself an enormous disservice. Go to professormesser.com/objectives, download the objectives. It should be the first thing you read when you start your studies. It should be the last thing you use as a checklist before you go into the exam, before you book your exam. So make sure you are familiar with these objectives. Don't miss this one. It's pretty important to have that functionality. Tells you everything you need to know. If you ever wondered, do I know everything I need to know for the exam? This will tell you. Tells you right there. So easy. We do one of these study groups every month, and we do multiple study groups a month. We do one for Core 1 every month. Our next Core 1 study group is going to be in January, on January the 5th. Come back then if you're a Core 1 person. If you're going to study for Core 2, show up in 2 days on Thursday. We're shooting this on a Tuesday. Show up on December 10th, Thursday. In 2 days, we'll do a Core 2 one, just like this. So that's one that we do. And also we have Network Plus and Security Plus study groups throughout the month. If you ever want to know when the next event is going to be, maybe you're here and you're wondering, this is well after January, when do I find out when the next event is going to be? Go to professormesser.com/calendar. Just follow that link at the bottom of the page, and that will take you right to the events calendar. We're not done, although the Q&A part where I ask you questions is done. Now the part where you ask me questions begins. That's our after show. Stick around for that in just a few minutes, and you'll be able to ask questions in the chat room and to call in on our call-in lines. Don't forget about our course notes and practice exams. You can find that at professormesser.com/1001success. Of course, we have practice questions every day for Core 1 and Core 2. You can find those at Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and other places by typing in professormesser.com/Twitter/YouTube/Instagram. You'll find all of that wherever it happens to be. Well, thanks for joining us for this first part of the study group. Stick around for the after show. Otherwise, we will see you next time on the Core 1A+ study group. Thanks, everyone. Well, let's see if I can now get the after show things going. I do not have a Discord server. I did try Discord to see if we could figure this out, but I've got a chat on my website. So at the bottom page of everything on my website, there's a chat. So you can do that there as well. My Instagram's still there, professormesser.com/Instagram. You just type in the name of the thing you want to find me on, and if I'm there, it will find me. So easy. Let me get my side set up so that we can call in. This takes me just a moment while I type in things for Skype. I have not preloaded the website for this, so if you bear with me for that, which means I have to log in. I got to start a thing here. I got to click a thing there. Oh, and now this isn't working. Fantastic. So we'll click type in a password. It's only, the primary password for everything that I do. We'll log into this. I had to check the video and make sure you weren't watching me type. Then I'd have to change everything. What a fun thing that would be. Let me call into the show. Stand by, everybody, while I just click a few more extra 27 buttons, and we will get this going as well. And then the nice person says here,
thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I type in a few things on my screen here, and it says,
enter your 6-digit PIN.
Well, now I got to remember what that happens to be. And if I do that, the nice lady said,
welcome, Professor Messer.
Well, thanks, nice lady. That means that the phone lines are up, the chat room is running, and that means that you're able to call in. If you're calling in from the continental U.S., it's a toll-free number. Go to 855-785-7545. That's 855-785-RJ45. That will get you to the toll-free number. If you're outside the continental United States, you can, of course, go to professormesser.com/live to get the details there. But you can go to Skype and put in a +1 with the same number. And that is a free number. It doesn't cost you any Skype minutes. It's a +1 855-785-7545. No, every single site I use has a different password, but I have a password manager that I use, 1Password. And I was typing in my 1Password password. But every other website is obviously different because it's all in 1Password. So all I have to do is type in the one password to get me in. In fact, on this particular machine, I don't know why I didn't do it. I've got it set up with the Apple technology, so I could just I could have clicked my watch. I could have just put my finger on the fingerprint reader and it would have done the same thing, but I wasn't thinking. So that gets me to where we needed to be for this. Then I don't have to put in any passwords. You just put your fingerprint on there. Now you can connect all those places you want to go to have those things there. If you're not using a password manager, you should absolutely use a password manager. Use LastPass, use 1Password, use a well-known, well-protected password manager. Your point is absolutely correct. You should not be using the same passwords for all of those. It is in a way like a single sign-on. It is. So I can use my credentials that are local, that are on my computer, that's the only place they are stored is in my brain. And once I am there, then it opens up my vault that has access to all of my other passwords that are there. And it's all encrypted. I've not used the Google Password Administrator. I didn't even know Google had one of those. I obviously use a lot of passwords. I use a lot of multi-factor authentication. So I use Authy for pretty much all of my password authentication because it's compatible with the Google password or multi-factor authentication. And it synchronizes to all my devices. So I can be on a Mac, I can be on Windows, I can be on iOS, I can be on smartphone and pop up Authy, and it just has everything listed there. And if I add a site on one, it shows up on all the others. So that's the one I use for that. For all of that. Best way to contact outside of the after show or outside of the live stream, you can always go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. It goes directly into my inbox. That's what I use. I don't use Microsoft's Authenticator. I have it loaded here. I don't use it. I have the Xbox Authenticator. Is that the Microsoft Authenticator? It might be. I use it for Xbox because Microsoft doesn't allow you to use the other ones. You have to use their Authenticator for Xbox, so I do use that for Xbox. There's another Authenticator I use that's specific to a manufacturer. This tends to be the latest trend is everybody has their own Authenticator, but it's a push authentication. So all you have to do is bring up the app on your phone and it says, oh, I see that. You don't have to type anything. I got it from here and it lets you in. So for Blizzard, these are the important ones, for Blizzard, for Microsoft Xbox, and there's one other that's not game related that I use. No, that's not true. Steam, it's the Steam Authenticator. I use that. But for everything else is 1Password. For those of you that are password people, that's what I use. Yes, it is. Right now, it's not a priority. Right now, I'm working on Security Plus. So I don't get any downtime right now. It's just churn. But as soon as that's over, maybe I'll get some more time in front of the console. That would be nice. Speaking of time in front of things, I don't know how that's a segue. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's start with the 757 area code. Hello, caller. Thanks for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Jim Sproul, calling from sunny Virginia Beach.
Hey, Jim. Thanks for calling from sunny Virginia Beach. What can we do for you?
I just, giving you a call. Actually, I'm sitting here streaming your live stream to my currently 20 students. So, we're sitting here going through this COVID-19 lockdown. But I teach cybersecurity, so A+ the first year, Net Plus the second year. But we try to catch your Q&As every month.
So this is great. So are you now in you're in a classroom environment now where everyone is there physically? Is everyone there virtually? How are you managing to get all of these things done to get through the A+ content?
So right now we're virtual. We actually went back for two whole days, and then they sent us back virtual again. But I'm trying to get some things set up, using VDI so we can get through, the 1002 series.
Great.
So using some open source tools and, basically demonstration and a lot of, going through. It's extremely challenging though, because it's, the A+ is hands-on.
Right. This is one of I think the problem a lot of people have when you're studying by yourself for A+ is that you kind of need a different group of people to bounce things off of. It's nice that if one person can be working on it, the other person can be doing something else. And for the Core 1, it's nice if you can actually touch the hardware, pull apart a cover of a computer, take it apart. It's kind of hard to do that in a video form because I'm in that challenge of trying to make that happen with my videos. It's kind of nice to have everybody in a classroom. I guess it's a little easier for Core 2, but I absolutely understand that. So as you're going through the training for this, I'm the one who tends to be asking more questions than you, Jim. I apologize. But as you're going through the process of learning all of these things then, and everybody is online watching all of these pieces, how do you manage to do things like show someone how to install a memory module?
So for my first year, I've got a setup that our school division bought. It's a stream deck with about 6 different cameras. So I've got them mounted, over top of a main board,
Nice.
and I'm able to go through. I've even looked at getting Pelican cases and actually trying to build out like a mini ITX kit that they could take home.
Right. This is one of these things that I even thought about kind of back when we were getting this thing together and trying to figure out what we wanted this business to be. And it ended up being primarily just online training and doing the videos and doing the live streams like this. We thought it would be nice if there was sort of a kit that everybody could just get that had everything in it you needed to learn A+. So you ship out the kit, but it has
Yeah.
its own set of challenges, as you probably found all too quickly.
Oh, yes.
Well, I appreciate everyone in your class. You want to give a shout out to the school, you're more than welcome to. I appreciate you watching. Thank you for really just following along with what we do and keeping us honest. And if there are any other times or other questions that come up from you and your students, let me know, and I wish you all the best.
Yeah. We're at the Advanced Technology Center in Virginia Beach City Public Schools.
That's fantastic. Thank you for calling, Jim. Best of luck to you, and I hope you get through this. We all get back to normal. We can all start installing our RAM modules in person again.
Yes. Thank you.
Appreciate the call. That's kind of exciting to hear people are using these technologies in different ways. We've almost had to change everything with how we learn it, but we still have to learn the same things. We run into challenges with that all the time. I have the same challenge too, because I'm obviously on this side of the camera. How do I get these things across to you and being able to work through it? It's a constant battle to figure those out. Back to the phones, the 760 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Stevie, and I'm calling from Southern California.
Thanks for calling, Stevie. What can we do for you?
Well, I took this class last year. I started taking my cybersecurity class last year, and how do I say this? I kind of bombed my 1001 the first time I took it.
That's a good way to say it.
And yeah, and I'm just trying to really I want to do it again because I want to make my teacher proud of me. And, I don't want to let anyone down. I don't want to let my parents down or anything like that. I just is this a common feeling to have when taking these tests? I'm just I just kind of want to know, am I the only one out there, getting worked up over this?
I think most of us are driven in some way by a fear of failure. I think there's and in fact, in IT, I constantly found fear of failure was my driver for this. I have horrible test anxiety. Once I start the exam, I have a lot of anxiety for the exam. And then once I kind of get into it and everything settles down, the exam goes fine. But when it just sort of day to day, my last position I had was as a senior systems engineer at a next generation firewall company. And every day I would go into meetings and have people ask questions of me that I didn't know the answer to. Every single meeting. And I always thought that, but wait, I'm supposed to be the person who knows everything they're asking. But as it turns out with technology, there is no possible way that any one person can know everything there is to know about the technology. Now, I knew 99% of what they were asking of me, which, as it turns out, is pretty darn good. But it's that one, you're always going to get somebody asking you something you just don't know. They're asking you about a technology you've never worked with before. They're asking you about a configuration setting that you've never done before. They're asking you about a functionality of the product that you never even thought of before. And you often have to go back to the people you know. The part that I think helped me the most in my career, in my job, at home, and really everything that I do, is I got to the point where I realized saying, I don't know, is a perfectly reasonable answer. And in many cases, allows me to learn the answer better. I started doing this in training classes. If you've ever been to any type of corporate training, and the instructor will stop every so often and say, are there any questions about that? And almost every time there would be silence. No questions about that. Okay, let's go to the next thing. The reality was there's lots of questions about what that person just said. Nobody's asking it. Nobody wants to be the person that says, I don't know what you're talking about. And so I thought, well, I'll be that guy, because it turns out, interesting enough, I have no idea what that guy was just talking about. And I would say, hold on, back it up a little bit. Show me that part again that you went through, because you lost me between this point and this point. I would sit on the front row. I'd say, all right, let's go through it again. So figure this out. And people afterwards say, I'm glad you had him back up at that point, because I was kind of lost in that section. It happens to everybody as we go through this. I talk often about failing certification exams. I failed plenty of certification exams. There was one exam I had to take 3 times before I would finally pass it. It was on network cabling, of all things. And it's one of those where, how are you going to know this content going in? None of us start in this industry knowing anything about technology. So how, of course, do you go through this process of learning all those? And everybody has a different way to get there. Some people like reading books, and that's their best way of doing it. Some people like watching the videos. That's their favorite way of doing it. Some people like just doing Q&A. Some people prefer working in a group. Some people prefer working alone. My recommendation to you is kind of take a step back and figure out, based on now you've been through the testing process now, you've kind of gone through the training and the learning and the testing process, and it wasn't optimal in your case. Now you could take a step back and say, what things could I have changed to make that process work better for me? Forget what other people are saying, because they're saying what worked for them. And you can, of course, take recommendations, but did a book work better for me? Did the video work better for me? Did a combination of those things work better for me? You should be able to put through what works better. Should I be making a better list of the exam objectives? Should I print out the exam objectives and just circle and mark a line through one at a time? As I finish them, we'll go through the one objective at a time until I got it. Sometimes it's brute force to be able to get through these things. None of this is easy. If this was simple, everybody could just walk into the exam and take it without studying. But these exams are difficult. The content you're learning is difficult. The perspective of how it applies across the entire IT pieces are challenging. So it's not supposed to be something easy you walk into and pass. But as long as you keep going back and you keep taking the exams and you keep trying, you haven't failed yet. You know, as soon as you decide you're done, that's when you failed. But of course you're going to slip. Of course you're going to fall. Of course you're going to fail. But as it turns out, with the A+ exams, with Microsoft exams, with Google exam, with all these certification exams, if you fail, here's what happens. Nothing bad happens. All that happens is now you have to pay some more money to go take the exam again. I guess that's painful in a degree, is the money part of it. But that's it. You don't lose anything. They don't hit you over the head. You don't lose your job. You know, none of these bad things happen. You just go back and study some more, and you figure out what you have to learn, and you go back and take the exam again. You just keep doing that until you pass your exam. That's it. That's the entire process. Is it frustrating and challenging? Is there anxiety? Is there a part of this, and you'll often see this written up on Reddit, is the part where people get into these jobs and they feel like they're an imposter. Imposter syndrome is what this is called. Where you get into a job, they just hired me to be a system administrator. I barely know how to run the system. That's how pretty much all of us work, by the way, in IT, is we're trying to figure it out. The things we know, we will do, and the things we don't know, we're just going to study up on that and figure it out. And then once we've figured it out, now that's another thing we know. It's in our know list. Now somebody asks you something else. Okay, now we need to set up the servers in a cluster. Oh, I've never set up servers in a cluster. All right, back to YouTube, back to the books, back to documentation. How do you set this stuff up in a cluster? Okay, I have to do this on my website this weekend where I have to upgrade my PHP version. I haven't upgraded PHP in years. So I'm trying to remember, well, do I do it with a yum? Wait, I don't have a repository to do that with the, how do I connect to a repository? What repository is the best? I call now my IT people at my hosting provider and I ask them, what's the best way to do this? I don't know the best way to do this. They're like, am I talking to Professor Messer? Shouldn't you know how to upgrade PHP? I'm like, brother, I haven't done this in years. You did it yesterday. That's why I'm talking to you. So tell me, what is the best way to do it? And they do. And they walk me through it. And they get to say, okay, I told Professor Messer how to upgrade his PHP. He hasn't done this thing in years. I did it for him in a day. We got it going on. And everybody's happy. So that's the key I recommend to you, is just keep doing this. We all have the anxiety. We all have the imposter syndrome. We all have the worry that we don't know enough about these things and we're going to look stupid in front of other people. I've just taken the approach that I don't mind looking stupid. As long as I figure it out and can on the other side of this say, I don't know the answer, but I will figure out that answer and I will get back to you. That's my new approach to almost everything I do. That's hopefully it's giving you some perspective, Stevie.
Yeah, this has helped. This has helped a lot. It's really given me definitely a way different approach and look on things that I haven't exactly thought of nor been really told before. So, thank you. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you calling. Thank you so much. You know, one of the things that I always find useful is just reaching out to other people and asking them. One of the things that I found to be a universal truth in our industry is everybody is always so willing to help. There's this perspective of technical people that they are arrogant and they are insulting and they don't like the end users. And I guess to some degree, maybe there's one of those guys out there. But everybody I've ever worked with in this industry, high-level techs, product managers, developers, people who are systems engineers, the people I worked for, the users I worked with, everybody's just trying to make all this stuff work. We're all just trying to figure it out. Sometimes it's easy to figure out. Sometimes it's complicated to figure out. We're all just trying to put together. And we tend to all work together to make these things happen. If you've ever wondered, is it okay to reach out to somebody and ask that question of them? The answer is probably yes. They're probably more than happy to help you. So that's what I would also recommend. For those of you that kind of aren't in this industry yet, kind of on the outside trying to get into it, that's what I would also recommend to you as well. Just reach out and ask. The worst somebody could say is, I don't have time for you, or they just don't respond. But you will be surprised how many people are more than willing to give you here's an idea. Here's what I did. Some people can give you a one-liner and say, you should read this. It'll explain everything to you. Or they'll say, here's a big explanation. Somebody will type these things out. I try to do as much of that as I can. You never know later on how that little piece of information was able to help someone out down the road, and then they're able to take that with someone else. So if you're in an environment where that isn't happening, you need to go find it because they're out there. The last place I worked was Palo Alto Networks as a systems engineer. What a fantastic place to work that had that type of corporate culture, if you will. Just work with very great professionals, people who knew their stuff. Everybody kind of had a thing they did they were an expert at. So, you have a BGP question? I'm an idiot with BGP. Let me go ask the BGP guy. I know the basics of BGP, but when you get into these larger implementations, I don't want to mess up the network. So let's see what this person says. They used to implement it all the time. They did a ISP. They did all this. They have a BGP background. That's who I'll go talk to. That's what I always recommend you do as well. Go reach out to those folks. So back to the phones and talk to the 803 area code. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from? Caller.
Hi, Professor Messer. My name is Jonathan, and I'm calling from Columbia, South Carolina.
Oh, I love Columbia. Hello, Jonathan. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Hi. My question was more of a career outlook question.
Okay.
In your experience, is it more important to maybe get as many certifications under your belt, or should I pursue a bachelor's degree in some form of IT to have the most success?
This is a common question, Jonathan. It's one I was just talking to someone. I think it was on I was on Reddit this morning. Somebody was talking about. No, it was in my YouTube comments. Somebody was looking over my latest certification videos. Yesterday I just released my first set of videos for my new Security Plus certification. And somebody was mentioning that they went out and got an IT degree. I don't remember if it was a cybersecurity degree or just a generic information technology degree, but they got a 4-year degree. And then they were making the comment that, well, I got this 4-year degree, but now I have to get these certifications. I feel like I wasted time with the 4-year degree, that I should have got the certifications instead of that, because that's what everybody's asking for. And I kind of had to reset the playing field a little bit for that person and let them know that, well, that's fine, but if you had just had the certifications, they'd be asking you for the 4-year degree, because they don't want one of those. They want both of those. In fact, they want 4 things. I'll talk about that in a moment, but the certifications don't replace a formal degree. A formal degree doesn't replace certifications. Those are different things that provide a different perspective and a different set of credentials for you. And it is also a type of credential, especially certifications, is a type of credential that's very subjective. Some employers love for you to have certifications. Some employers, they don't care if you have a certification or not. Some employers want you to have a certain type of cert. Some employers don't even care if you have that type of cert. It's not a standard thing no matter where you go. Formal education does tend to be that way, but certifications not so much. And I've, of course, met lots of people that I think spend their career collecting certifications. I've met some of these people that have 20 certifications under their belt. And they put all those initials after their name of those 20 certifications, which more power to you. Good job. I think that's awesome. I'm not going to be that guy, though. I don't go around putting together all these certifications just to have them. And I understand exactly why they did it and the value it provided to them as a person, but I think that's an individual decision. Kind of back to your question, though, which is, should you be going after all these certs? Which ones should you be going after? Which ones make the most sense? And I sort of answered this very quickly and almost flippantly in the pre-show, which was the question isn't what certification should you go get? The question really is, what do you want to do with your career? Effectively, what do you want to be when you grow up is that question that always comes back with this. So the question you should figure out is maybe you're working outside the industry now and you want to get into the industry, and your first very common position in the industry is something like a help desk. So, okay, for a help desk, what do all the companies in my area say I need to get a job on their help desk? So let's go to Indeed.com. Let's go to Dice.com. Let's go to all of the local companies. Let's go to the company website and look in their career section, find the openings that they have, see if they have a help desk position open, and list out what they have. Are they looking for a formal degree? If so, what kind? Are they looking for certifications? If so, which ones? Are they looking for other types of technology knowledge that you have? What are those? It's almost worth your time making a spreadsheet of this and putting in a spreadsheet all of the different companies, all the positions they have open, and list out what they're looking for. And you're probably going to start to see some similarities as you go through this. Some of those similarities might be based on what certifications they're looking for. It might be based on 4-year degree, 2-year degree, master's degree. I don't know what people are looking for these days. It may be certain types of technologies they're looking for. You might be looking for Microsoft technology or Amazon or Azure or whatever it happens to be. Those are the things. I list out all of these I have a video on my channel, which is how to get a job in IT with no experience. And I talk about these 4 elements that people really need to have when getting a job. One is a formal degree. One is certifications. One is some practical experience, which I realize has its own set of challenges, but I talk about that in the video. And the last one, we don't say this enough, is someone who already works there. And you don't have to be their friend. You don't have to, go over to their house on the weekend, but having a professional relationship or a professional correspondence with someone. Maybe you're part of the same Microsoft user group. Maybe you converse with each other over Reddit or on LinkedIn. But you know someone who works there, and in the interview you could say, yes, I know Mike in IT because we're in the same Microsoft user group together, and he told me about this job. So knowing somebody at those companies is almost just as important as those other 3 elements I mentioned, the formal degree, the certifications, and the practical experience, because people like to hire people they know and people they can trust. That video goes into more details. It's a 30-minute long video. It's much more involved than anything I could ever answer in the after show, but that might be something worthwhile to look at as well, Jonathan.
Okay. And my final question for that would be, I currently do have an associate's. Would you recommend maybe just getting a help desk position just to get my feet wet per se, and then continuing to pursue a bachelor's degree just to get some experience?
It might work out that way for you. And it might be the best path for you depending on what companies are looking for. I think as long as you get your foot in the door with technology, that's probably the most important part. And I have worked with people who were brilliant technologists, who were incredibly bright, technical and sales type people. They were smart. They knew how to put things together in a way that made sense. They were able to solve problems for their customers that had no college degree, and yet they were making six figures plus a year, multiple six figures a year, because they were able to take what was effectively the knowledge they took from books and from the on the job, and really be able to build that into something without having a 4-year formal degree. What I find interesting is that person who was that successful would sometimes tell me, yeah, but I still wish I had that formal degree. People keep asking for that 4-year degree. I feel like maybe I missed out on something, or I have less of something because I don't have that degree under my belt. And I told them, you've lost your mind. You're incredibly successful, and don't worry about that part of it. Just show them your bank account, and I think that covers you. But I get it. I understood what they were saying, that there was more that they could do. There was more that probably because other employers, other people look to see, oh, where'd you go to school? Where'd you go to college? Where'd you get your degree? Becomes this talking point to have that piece there. So I understand the wanting. As far as IT is concerned, it isn't necessarily an advantage. Obviously, employers are looking for this, so it can be in the job hunt. What you will really find is later on through the years, as you move up and perhaps are in a place where you might want to get into a management position, that's one where they almost really require you to have a college degree, or at least a 4-year degree for something like that. But it's not a complete necessity. And if you've already got an AA degree, then you've already got something formal that you can kind of start this process. And later on, as you get into these companies, you might even find that a number of these companies have programs that will pay for your extra 2 years of college to get your 4-year degree. So that's one of those that might help as well. There's not one path that everybody should follow to get to where they need to go. With IT especially, there are all these different ways to move up the mountain. It's a little bit different than if you were wanting to be a doctor. There's a very specific path you have to follow. If you want to be a nurse or a lawyer, there's a very specific path you have to follow. If you want to be a firefighter, there's a very specific path you have to follow. IT is not quite that formal. There's a lot of different ways to get to where you need to go. You just need to find the way that works best with you.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. I definitely appreciate it.
Thanks for the call. Thanks, Jonathan. It's a little bit of a challenge to try to figure out where to go from there. There's a question in the chat room. What if you have a management degree not relating to IT? Well, I think I can speak to that one, since my degree is a 4-year degree in business management. It's not an IT degree. So pretty good example. I worked with a lot of people that their degrees were not degrees in IT or even a technical degree. I worked with a lot of finance majors. I worked with engineering majors. I worked with people that did not have degrees. I worked with people that had non-business, non-technical, maybe even degrees in economics, degrees in English literature. It's interesting what brings us to the middle of all of this in IT and those pieces of it. Now, for me, I had an interest in technology. It's just when I went to college, there weren't quite the type of computers that we have today. There was no internet when I went to college. So it was a little bit different perspective. There were still MIS degrees and computer science degrees. We still had technical degrees, and I worked in the computing center at my university. But I just did not get a technical degree for whatever reason. I think I know why, and that's a different conversation we can have. But that was a good example of a business management degree that rolled right into technology. And I think the things that I learned did help me out. Does it make sense to study? I'll be back to the phones in just a moment. I know a number of you are holding, and I appreciate it. Question in here, does it make sense to study computer science and pursue it at the same time? And I would highly recommend you look at the computer science curriculum. And one of the things I put at the very beginning of my video on how to get a degree in IT, or how to get a job in IT with no formal experience, is that there's a difference between IT and computer science. Those are two separate fields within technology. Computer science is about programming, development, creating applications, building and coding, building hardware, designing hardware, coding the hardware, designing applications, designing software, building the software. That's computer science. I'm speaking very broadly here. IT is the side that is able to design the network, build the storage infrastructure, maintain the servers, run the applications, manage the data, secure the systems, keep it all running. That's the IT side of things. And if you were to create a Venn diagram of those two things, there's barely an overlap in the middle. So no, I would not recommend you study computer science if you're interested in going into a job in IT, because there's very little you're learning that will actually help you. The problem and challenge you have, though, is many universities, for whatever reason, think that computer science is IT. They think you're coding. There you go. You know computers. That's it. They don't have any curriculum for the IT side of things. I'm seeing a lot more moving over into that field, though. I'm seeing more schools now are starting to create an IT program that really is IT. There's no programming there. You're not having to learn physics. You don't have to learn calculus for this. That's the key for me is find the school that can really teach you IT. Now, if you're interested in computer science, you're interested in coding, you're interested in building apps, go into computer science, absolutely. But just be aware, has nothing to do with the IT side of things. You're not going to get an A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus if you're over on the computer science side. So that's it. And for example, in the chat room, as if I needed one, here's Katrina's a software development major. CompTIA A+ is a required certification for your degree. There you go. Makes no sense whatsoever. And please let them know I said so. Tell them to stop that. Don't do that anymore. Stop making us do things because it needs to check something on a list. That just makes no sense whatsoever. Back to the phone calls. Thank you for holding for so long. 347 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Ken. I am calling from Philadelphia.
Thanks for holding for so long. Ken, what can we do for you?
Sure. So this is two questions. One, I actually just passed my Core 1 exam. So a lot of that with your help. Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
I did a lot of, thank you. I did a lot of practice exams and things like that. I was scoring in like the 90s from me trying to score them myself to the best of my ability. And then I got to the exam and I passed just barely by 10 points. I had reviewed the exam objectives. I felt really confident going in. I think I might have gotten a much harder variant of the exam. It felt much less gentle than any of the other practice exams I'd ever done.
Right.
And so I'm going to the Core 2, and I know that it's 25 points higher to pass it. And in addition to sort of going through the exam objectives and really knowing, being sure that I know each of those pieces, I was wondering if you have any recommendations on maybe a certain number of practice exams that I should be doing, because it really threw me off how much more challenging it was when I went in. And passing by 10 points was not something that I was expecting and not something I want to risk again.
This is a very, very good question about these exams. I often say that people that they feel like they just passed the exam, I always say, well, you studied exactly the right amount, as it turns out. Because you get no extra points. There's nothing extra you get for getting a perfect score or getting a higher score. You studied exactly the right amount for that particular piece of it. And I that's sort of tongue in cheek, it would be nice to have a little bit higher of a score there to be able to have some comfort level. It may be, and I often say this to people, is that some people do better on the Core 2 because they're more familiar with operating systems. They've been using Windows for a long time. They can do all of those different things. The other people may be better off with hardware, do better on the Core 1. That might be the case with you as well, is being able to do something like that. That I think is not really a factor of your studying as much as it is maybe the topics that are on the exam. and having all of those things there. That's where I would also recommend you look at the exam objectives. If you've had a chance to go through the Core 2, do you think the Core 2 objectives have a better feel for what you know, or is it just as complicated and difficult as the Core 1?
Yeah, I've definitely combed through. I started going through the security plus material first before I even started taking any exams. So I know that's a huge chunk of it. So that's all I'm familiar with. So I feel more comfortable, I think, going into this one. But I guess I'm all about C's get degrees, but it just really threw me off by how much lower I scored than sort of expected. And I have a follow-up question.
Well, let me first say that just don't worry about that score too much. I think your strategy was a good one. I think the top things you were using to study with were the right things. I think you were doing exactly the right things to study for what you needed to study. I wouldn't change a thing with those pieces. Keep doing the same thing, and I think you're going to do fine on Core 2. Sorry, your next question.
So my end goal is security. And I'm coming from, I'm a therapist currently, so I'm coming from an unrelated field. And I've been talking to a friend of mine who is in security, and he's trying to push me to jump past the CompTIA trifecta. Particularly, he's saying the Net Plus isn't going to be very helpful. From my perspective, I'm trying to sort of show an employer in the future, and this is something I would build during a help desk position, that I have experience with networking, and that I'm familiar with the content and the material, because I won't be having a formal degree going into security. And he's saying just get your Sec Plus, maybe get a Pen Test Plus or a CISA Plus. He's like, just get those done and out of the way. Don't spend, what he's saying, sort of waste your time for those 2 months if you can redirect that energy elsewhere. So I was hoping you could help us sort of come to a conclusion with this argument we've been having. Is it worth investing the time in a Net Plus? I know people are always talking about the CompTIA trifecta, but I don't want to fall into it's the standard. And I'm not really seeing it in job expectations, like in job descriptions. So I can kind of see where he's coming from, but I also want to show employers, like I said, that I have a formal understanding of the material, and through my help desk position, that experience will help solidify that.
The types of requirements from employers vary widely depending on where you are in the country. And I'm speaking very specifically about the United States, but it also varies depending on what country you're in as well. But let's talk about North America anyway. The United States and Canada it varies widely. If you go to the DC area, the Security Plus would be the first thing you get. You wouldn't even start with the A Plus or Network Plus. You would not even think of getting those. Of course, you're going to get Security Plus. If you are in LA, it's a completely different set, and you're doing the right things. You're looking at job postings. You're looking to see what other people are asking for, and you're trying to build that case to show a prospective employer, here's why I should have this job. And if nobody's asking for Network Plus, then if that makes perfect sense why you would not want to get that, because it's not going to help you very much on that first step of the job hunt. Now, once you get that first job and you're doing that piece of it, and maybe you get a job working, you're working on Security Plus, it's an emphasis of what you're doing. You're in an area where there's probably a security operations center or a SOC that has an entry-level security job that they're hiring for. That's a perfect place to go. And probably when you get that job, there's going to be a need to learn more about the network side of things. Because I can tell you from a security perspective, you have to have a strong knowledge of networking to be able to design, protect, and manage a network at the security level. So maybe you're starting on the security, you're going to find out later on, I need to get Network Plus, or I need to get a Cisco CCNA, or I need to get pick one of those other networking certifications out there from Juniper and other places. Those are important certifications to have as well, but you also don't want to worry about putting too much on the resume for an entry-level position. Most places are looking for A+ and or Security Plus. I think you're right. I think a smaller group of them even mention Network Plus, although you will certainly find some. But I think you're starting in the right places. Those two, which are on the ends, and okay, you're not getting the triple play trifecta thing there, but the employers aren't asking for them. So what difference does it make? It's more of a personal knowledge thing than anything. And eventually you're going to get there because you have to. I think your strategy is a good one.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for your time. And I really appreciate what you're doing for the community.
Thanks, Ken.
So I'm going to continue to try to support you as best as I can. Take care.
And I appreciate it. Best of luck with that Security Plus.
Oh, I appreciate it.
That's one I think that it's a combination of things. He'll get his 1002 down. He'll move Security Plus, skip over Network Plus. It sounded like that's the direction to go. I think that's a good 1-2 punch for the particular geography he's in. He's already looked at the job postings. You already go through the list of all the things people want. Now, if you go through the job postings and every single employer wants Network Plus, then go get Network Plus. You know, it's one of those things where it's your objective that's driving what you get, not the certification itself. I think I've said that 12 times now. And it really makes a difference. It really is important that you consider it that way. Back to the phones, 850, my area code. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Yeah, hey there, David. I'm just down I-10 in Pensacola.
Oh, thanks for calling, David. What can we do for you?
Well, for starters, I just wanted to say, again, like the previous caller said, thanks so much for what you do. I just passed my 1001, took it last week, and got a 750. Couldn't be more pleased about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. One thing that was interesting that I wanted to point out, whenever I was taking a peek at some of the objectives for the 1002, there's a surprising amount of overlap. More than half of the performance questions that I was given was given a scenario. Basically, you would be configuring Microsoft Windows networking on a client desktop, whether you're doing something with maybe not necessarily domain, but there was a lot of Wi-Fi setup, explanation on remote desktop. That was kind of surprising because it's not really listed in the objectives. I would definitely say, in support of what you were saying earlier, a lot of people find the 1002 to be easier. After having taken the 1001, I would definitely agree with that. I'm out here passing the practice tests for the 1002 in the 90s percentile compared to previously in the 1001, maybe not so great.
I think it's two things. I think it's a little bit of overlap of the content. I think it's kind of an understanding of what is coming, what the method is used. It's a similar method. It's like you're doing the same thing again. It's just different content. I think that helps too.
Yeah, absolutely. Small little tip I wanted to throw out there. I feel in the comments a lot of times people seem to really be struggling with those common port numbers. Do I really need to know these well-known port numbers? How well-known are they? How do I get this in my brain? For me personally, memorizing stuff like that, very tough. What I did was immediately before going in, I made some cue cards, old school style, like I'm back in high school. Had everything on my flashcards, just got a good session in, just 20 minutes in the parking lot, just hanging out ahead of time, making sure I'm comfortable and not stressing myself out. And as soon as I went in, they presented me with a little whiteboard so that you can put some stuff down on. Yep. And I just wrote down every bad boy I could remember because I knew that 30 minutes from now, that material might not quite be fresh on my mind. And lo and behold, I didn't struggle with that at all.
That's one of the tips that is given, and it depends on where you are and what testing center you go to as to how much of that you're able to do. For example, if you're testing at home, it's all a whiteboard that is on your computer. So you'd have to type everything in, but then you could reference that later. If you're in a testing center, they do give you a piece of laminated paper. In fact, one of the tips I often tell people is to bring your own erasable pen. That's a fine tip because for some reason they give you like a poster board marker that you're somehow expected to use on this, and it's just horrible experience. And as long as they say it's okay to bring it in, you can bring that in with you. The piece that I often tell people, though, is that technically they're supposed to start the exam going. Your counter is supposed to be going for 90 minutes before you can write these things in. So you have to wait for the clock to start, and then you can write things on the board. Other places I have been in, you have that 15-minute period where you have to read through the candidate agreement and digitally sign that says that you're not going to cheat. You're not going to tell people about what you saw in here, that everything in Vegas stays in Vegas. And then you sign it and you get some time to do that. And people will start writing during that time frame. Technically, you're not supposed to do that. Technically, you're supposed to only start writing when the exam starts, but some testing centers are a little bit lax or give you a little bit more leeway. And if they do, then perhaps I'm more than happy to take advantage of that leeway if it happens to come my way. And I think writing those things on that whiteboard are extremely valuable strategy, because then you don't have to worry about it in the exam. And I think that helps a lot with those port numbers. You're absolutely correct, David.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I just wanted to call in and say thanks again. All of your material has been substantially helpful. Anyone out there who is watching this and is concerned, hey, you know, this is all I've got is Professor Messer. Is this going to do it for me? I'm out here with the 750. So
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Congratulations. Best of luck with the next one.
Thank you.
That's always good to hear too. One of the things that that I always the writing down of things in the exam is always a challenge. I think it's one of the advantages of going to a testing center is that you have the pen and paper in front of you. I think that's an advantage. There's something about typing it into the whiteboard, which is just as accessible online if you want to do it at home. I don't know. There's something about writing it and having it right next to me, I think makes it a little bit easier. For those of you in the chat wondering, we were sort of talking, I was kind of doing this while people were talking, and they were right. This is a Contigo coffee mug, and it's full of coffee. And I do this all the time. And if you've never had one of these, I don't work for Contigo. I'm not one of their affiliates or anything. But this is just, I have many of these. It won't come out. It is just amazing. That's why it's on this desk. I don't know if you've noticed, there's a little bit of technology here. You do not want to spill anything on this desk. So that's why the Contigo is on my desk, is because it is amazing and protects everything that I have right here. Also, the keyboard I'm using, this funky curved keyboard, is the relatively new K860 from Logitech. It is wireless, as you can see. It is curvy. That's quite a curve. It's a very nice keyboard to have if you're doing a lot of typing. And as a keyboard goes, one of those you may have noticed in the past, I've used the Microsoft ergonomic. This is a Logitech, one of their relatively new ergonomics. And the keyboard's so much better than the Microsoft. Microsoft this one's a little bit quicker. It's a little bit more responsive, feels better. It's not quite as nice on the backspace key for some reason, and it's hard to see. They put a print screen key just above the backspace key. All right, well, I don't know which genius at Logitech had done this, but it's so easy when you're hitting backspace to hit this print screen, and it takes a print screen of both of the screens of my computer and stores it every time I hit that. They have some software though, where you can customize pretty much every one of the non-letter keys, and you can turn them off. So the latest software they released for macOS actually works to turn that off, and now I don't hit a print screen key anymore. Although it's a worthless key. It's there and it doesn't do anything. I've just turned it off. To have that, it's amazing keyboard to have this. For this. Can I do more? Take 10 questions and do videos for each of them. I'd love to do videos for every single one of them. I do have 4 new, that's 40 more questions I'm planning on adding this week for this. So that's one of those, to have that there. And since we're talking keyboards, we'll be back to phones in just a moment. You may have noticed the mouse is enormous. Like my entire hand, if it's on this mouse, this is a hand shoe mouse from Hippus, Hippus, a Netherlands company. And it's when you put your whole hand on. So nothing stays, you don't have any fingers off the side. I guess this is people who sit at their desk all day and have to do this. That is what that is all of those pieces, to have those there. So that's, there's all this other stuff on my desk. If you're wondering what a lot of these things are, you can find it on my website, professormesser.com/studio. And you can learn about the video switcher and the audio and the camera and all of those things. It's all on the website. The chairs, some cheap chair I bought at Office Depot 15 years ago, and for some reason still works. they don't make it anymore. Try to get another one. This is one of those fears, is that I have to replace my chair. And I'm not sure what to do. Let's go back to the phones. Thank you for holding for so long. 513 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, my name is Michael, calling from Ohio.
Hey, Michael. What can we do for you?
Okay?
Sound good.
All right. Let's see. I had a question regarding your resources online for
Sure.
passing the exam. I noticed among them you recommend getting a good book. If you are not referring to your course notes, what would you recommend using to, I'd say, in sync with your course bundle?
There is a link on my website. It's in the pull-down menus under Core 1 Training. Let me see if I can bring it up on the screen for those of you that are watching. And that link right under these pull-down menus at the very bottom for Core 1, Core 2, Network Plus, and Security Plus, it's called the study recommendations page, where, of course, I say you should have videos, but I talk about good books, and I've listed 4 books that are 4 that I generally like. They're pretty good books. Each one has a different style to it, but you're able to click on them, go over to Amazon, and then you're able to read through the first chapter or so of the book to kind of get a feel for what the style is, because the Cybex book is very different than the Mike Myers book, is very different than the Exam Cram book, and of course very different than the Dummies book. But all of them are very good. So I put all 4 of those there. That is just a recommendation. There are others on Amazon and other places that are also good books, but I feel like these are 4 of not only the most popular, but they tend to be some pretty good books to be able to work through. So that's where I tend to put those in there. Same idea. Obviously, my videos, course notes, and my practice exams are on here. But the resource number 3, Plenty of Hands-On, is a link over to Practice Labs, where I am an affiliate of Practice Labs, but I've been working with those guys for years before they had affiliates. I've met them. I've worked with them forever. I've used their stuff. It's very good. And so I put that there because a lot of people want online labs and being able to work through those. So those are available for people to look through as well, all on that A+ Study Resources page.
Okay. And so the name of I just got back to my seat and missed the name of the one you said was different from Mike Myers.
The 4 that I have up there's a book from David Prowse, has the Exam Cram A+ book. That's different than the Exam Cram practice questions book. And it's a textbook for A+. There's the Mike Myers CompTIA A+ Certification Exam Guide, which is an enormous monster-sized book. But it's got everything in there and then some. He goes a little overboard and talks outside the scope of the exam, but everything you need to know is somewhere in there. Cybex is probably the one that is most to the point, along with the Exam Cram. So the Cybex A+ Complete Study Guide's a good one. And although I liked the Dummies book, some folks in the chat room said they didn't like the Dummies book, which I think is a really good example of why you should go out to each one of these and read through a chapter on the Amazon website, or download it, the Kindle version, and read through the practice version, the demo version, just so you can see if it works for you. Because what I like, somebody else doesn't like. You need to find the book that really has a good connection to what you want to do with it. So that's what I'd recommend.
Okay. I think I'm going to go with the one that's most straight to the point, and I appreciate that recommendation.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your help.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate the call. That's it. Everybody's book. It's sort of like your chair that's in your studio. It's so subjective. It's about your personal needs and wants for that. What do you like about it? What do you not like? The next chair I get, do I want one that has a lot of support up at the neck? Do I need more lumbar? Do I prefer one that has more control over up and down, so I'm not sticking my head up over the side of the screen? I don't know. So it's a little different. My needs are a little different than someone else's. Same thing for books. Have that there. Back to the phones. Thanks for holding for so long. Another Florida caller, 407. Thanks for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, hi, Professor Messer. This is Lillian Reyes from Orlando, Florida. And I just completed my CompTIA Cybersecurity IT Professional Course, which consisted of the ITF, the A Plus, Network Plus, and Security Plus.
Wow.
And so, it was quite overwhelming, to say the least, with so much information crammed up in a short period of time. And so now I'm kind of in a crossroads where, what certification do I start studying for? Because I really want to focus more on the cybersecurity side of things as opposed to the network side of things. And I was speaking with WGU University, because the other thing that I wanted to do was to kind of roll that over into a 4-year degree, because there's a lot of jobs out there that, the first thing they do is, as a prerequisite, is they want a bachelor's, or, in addition to a bachelor's, they want all these certifications. So, I'm not sure, do I do the A plus first, or, because you don't have to take them in any particular order. So, or since my primary focus is to really kind of get more in depth with the cyber security side of things, do I just focus on the Security Plus certification?
It's a little one or the other, and it kind of depends on what jobs are available in your area or what jobs you are interested in pursuing, because these days the jobs tend to be a lot more remote than they used to be. One of the things that I would recommend is, you've got a lot of choices in the Orlando area for technology positions. Some of them are with companies locally that are obviously entertainment type companies. There are companies in Orlando that are publishing companies. There's financial organizations. There are government contractors. Those requirements for those different employers are going to vary widely. Some of them are going to want you just to have an A+. They'll start you in the help desk, and then they'll move you into networking or security from there. Other organizations, I would imagine the one that is the big one in town, that's the government contractor, probably does have a focus on Security Plus, but I don't know. I haven't looked at their job postings. It might not. I think the focus is going to be for where you want to work in the area. What are they looking for? You're right. A lot of employers are going to ask for that 4-year degree by default, but not everybody requires it. And most everybody's going to start you on a help desk anyway. There's not a lot of security jobs that are entry level, although in Orlando, there probably is a security operations center of some kind. There's some very big companies that are based there or that have facilities there where they might have a SOC or a security operations center, or would allow you to work remotely in a security operations center capacity. Those are great entry-level jobs that might want you to have that Security Plus. So it's one of those answers to a question that's going to be, it depends, depending on what you would like to do and what the employer is looking for. You should try to maybe focus on creating a list of those employers in the area, figuring out what they would like to see, and then maybe working towards that based on a combination of those.
So, thank you for that. With CompTIA, so once you complete the program, they do have a job placement program.
Oh, wow.
But before they could even begin working with you, you have to have at least 2 of the certifications already under your belt.
Gotcha. Well, in that particular case, it may be a timing thing. It might be more of a which ones are easier than the others. You might have, now that you've gone through all of these, it's a pretty big set of trainings that you did. You may have a feel for which ones were easier for you than others. You may find that Security Plus is the easiest one you went through. Other people find that Network Plus might be easier than some of the others. Maybe that's what you try to do first, is get 2 of those many that you went through. All of them are valuable to some degree, and A+ obviously requires you pass 2 separate exams, which is why I didn't naturally go there to start with, because that's twice as much work to get that one under your belt. But you may find that most employers would like you to have that one to start with, so maybe that extra time might be worth it.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was leaning towards, because that is one of the primary ones that I noticed that are required. So, with that being said, in some of the resources, like they have the I don't know how much of the curriculum you know of CompTIA, but I know you've spoken a lot about it. But they have their own resources of where they have their practice exams through CyberVista, I think it is, or Kaplan, one of those. And so, and I've kind of been practicing with those, but I feel that the questions in those practice exams, when you go back to like the study guides that they used in the materials, like they don't quite coincide. So like, for example, with the performance questions, if I try to go back into the book, they don't really have the graphical, images that they have on the practice exam. So when you go to look for it in the book, it's not, you don't see the same image, but it's more just written out for you verbally as opposed to in a graphical format. And I think that's kind of where I'm finding a little bit of a struggle there. So do you recommend, I mean, obviously with your resources that you provide, what are your thoughts on that as far as maybe using that resource as opposed to CompTIA's resource? I mean, I know you really can't say in that sense which is better or not, but I mean, just to give me an overall, more of an angle of, you know, what's going to be a better resource to prepare me for this exam.
The number
I know that's
one,
kind of a loaded question.
I don't think it is, though. It is to some degree, but I'll tell you what the foundation is. Regardless of the training materials, everything always goes back to the exam objectives. So before you look at anybody's book, before you look at anybody's videos, before you look at anybody's hands-on, before you look at anybody's performance-based testing studies, everything has a foundation in the exam objectives. So you probably are not going to find a lot of similarities or a lot of performance-based questions that are duplicated from one person's material to the other, because performance-based questions are completely subjective. They're building those in their own style with their own set of requirements based on what we've kind of seen CompTIA do in the past. And I do the same thing on my study groups. I do the same thing in my practice exam books. I try to come up with what style of question would CompTIA ask, but it doesn't necessarily fit back to an exact question because we don't know what kind of questions they're going to ask on the exam. They don't share the type of questions they're going to ask on the exam. You're sort of trying to build it out based on things that have happened in the past, but it all has a foundation in the exam objectives. It's almost, I tell people all the time, the performance-based questions are simply multiple choice-based questions asked a different way. And they're asking them as matching questions or fill in the blank or drag and drop, but it's the same content. They're just asking you the same topics from the exam objectives in a way that doesn't happen to be multiple choice. I think recently CompTIA is trying some different performance-based questions. I think they're trying to make them harder. I don't know why. They were difficult enough as they were, but they tend to be changing some of the style a little bit. And I'm starting to see a little bit of movement there. I think they're trying a lot of different things. But I think if you focus on the exam objectives, you focus on a core knowledge of how does this email communication work? How do you set up email on a mobile device? How do you configure an 802.11 wireless access point or a router? Once you know how to do those things, it doesn't matter how they ask you how to do it. You know how it works, and you can pretty much answer the question. So my recommendation would be just stick to the exam objectives. Don't worry so much about how they're asking the question. Worry about what's on the question, and I think you'll be fine.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that feedback. And I appreciate everything that you do. Definitely very informative, very resourceful in everything that you provide to the community. So kudos to you there.
Thanks,
and,
Lillian. I appreciate
really
it. Best of luck.
All of your material. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I appreciate the call. It's a challenge when you get to performance-based questions. It almost would be better if the entire exam was multiple choice, then there wouldn't be any surprises. But it's that, I think we talked earlier when we started the calls, the fear of the unknown. We don't know what these questions are going to be like. We can't study for them, because if we studied for them, then we'd know what they were like. They don't want you to know what they're like. And they keep changing them on top of all of that. So the best thing we can do is to go through a few examples of them so you kind of get a feel for what drag and drop question is like, what a matching question is like, what a fill in the blank question or a scenario question might be like. And then you just kind of hope for the best on the exam because you already know the underlying content. So you should be able to answer it. Back to the phone. I know we're in super overtime here, but let's go back to the phones for the 847 area code. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Brendan. I'm calling from Queen Creek, Arizona.
Thanks for calling, Glendon. What can we do for you?
Hi, I have a kind of a career-based question. I got into IT. My friend back in Chicago told me it'd be a good career path to go down after doing some music and odd jobs for a while, trying to get a more stable job. But he said that he worked a job where he would dispatch IT people, where he would be taking self-employed contractors and giving them work. And the contractor idea sounded appealing to me because of doing music and stuff on the side and all that. So I was wondering, how do you even get into being a contractor? My goal now is to complete the courses and get like a help desk job for a while. It's kind of what I want to do. But, how do you get into doing contracting work like that? That was my question.
There are some big companies out there that will hire contractors and they just kind of have you on their list. And they manage this. I'm trying to remember some of these names off the top of my head. I really should keep a list. Maybe the chat room is able to help us out with a little bit of those. There's 2 or 3 really big ones nationally, and you kind of get on their list. They know in your area, here are certain things. Okay, so the chat room's already starting to fill some of these things in. And you're right, Robert Half is one I've heard of before, Robert Half Technology. That's Robert Half, Half Technology. I haven't heard of this one, Insight Global. Other people are saying that one is another popular one. There's a third one. I'm trying to remember the name. Maybe the chat room can remember as well. But there's 3 or 4 that start to do that. And I bet if you Googled Robert Half, all of the others would show up in Google. All the other competitors would show up along with those. But those are the ones. Robert Half's come up like 4 times now in the chat room. Those are pretty good. Apex? I haven't heard of Apex. Are you talking about the game or are you talking about a contracting company? But if you start with those, that should give you get on their list. I think that would give you a pretty good place to start with. I would not necessarily start with the companies that are, or the organizations that have the website contracting where you do the onesie twosie type things. I think the larger ones might be a better place to start with, and you can kind of focus from there. Applied Insight is another one they mentioned from there. Those are good places to go. I've heard at least one of those. I didn't know that General Dynamics did that. That might be People to Go. That doesn't sound right. Not sure that's legit. You might want to check that out. But those are some to consider anyway. Maybe start with the Robert Half Technologies and see if you can get some action going with those folks and get some jobs under your belt. Who was the company that did all the stuff for Dell? Are they still doing that one? There was a company I would work with all the time because I had a bunch of Dell equipment and it kept breaking, where they would just constantly be dispatched, and Dell would use those as their contractors. Those are others you can consider as well. Think of doing some Google searches on those, Glenda.
All right. Yeah, I think that helps a lot. So also, what do you if I'm not doing that contracting right away, do you recommend starting out with the help desk position first to get experience? What do you think the best route is for getting to that eventual contracting place?
Before I answer in the chat room, the Dell uses Unisys, CompuCom, or Worldwide. Those are the 3 they do for these. Contractor work gives you a lot of flexibility. I think contractor work is a little more remote, you going places and handling things, remote service. You're in your car, you're putting some mileage on your car to make that happen. But it's usually in your local area to be able to do that. Contractor work tends to be a little bit more flexible because you get to decide whether you would like to do that or not. But having a corporate help desk position gives you some obvious benefits. Contractor work, they tend to hire you and you tend to have a higher salary, but you're responsible for taking care of your federal withholding. You're hired as a contractor, so they don't generally take withholding out of your pay. Usually the benefits are not there. They don't usually give you healthcare benefits. You'd have to buy those yourself or on the open market. So you kind of have to take care of the benefit side or the important side of things yourself. If you go to work at a company, it's a 9 to 5. They usually are taking care, because you're an employee, they're taking care of your withholding. Your Social Security gets paid. There are also usually benefits in a large company for having health care. Usually there's benefits for some type of financial, those types of things. And there's a combination. There's some of these that are hybrids. Not all of this is the same for everybody. And as some people are mentioning in the chat room, there are some contracting companies that do have benefits. It really does depend on the contracting company and what you're doing. And it depends on the style that you like to be. Some people really love the full-time employee perspective. They think it gives you a better upward mobility, and they're probably right. Contractor positions have a completely different set of advantages and disadvantages. Depending on where you are and what you're trying to do, you may want to start with one and then kind of lead into the other. I found that I was not a contractor, but I worked for a company sort of as a remote fix-it person, and I ended up going to work for one of the companies I did remote fixing for. So you can meet a lot of people that way and eventually maybe roll that into more of a full-time job. That might be a good strategy too.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful to me. Thanks for all your help.
Good. Best of luck with that. Let us know how it goes.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks for the call. That's one that I started. My very first job at a college was working for a computer company in South Miami. And I was an employee of the company. I was not a contractor. I worked full time, and we had a group of customers we took care of. But my job was a remote service technician, so which was a fancy term for someone who delivered printer cables, as it turns out. I did more than just deliver printer cables. A lot of what you're doing, though, is that delivering a monitor and hooking it up. There wasn't really high tech. Or there were some cases where I was installing hard drives and upgrading memory, and at least got into the guts of a computer and did some fun things. In fact, it was that job where we were doing the network upgrade and found the RAID drive that was still running after the mirror was broken months ago. So you never know what you're going to find. There were all kinds of things. That was also the one where I fixed a computer in jail. That's the one where I went to jail. That's another great story. Back to the phones. The 706 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Professor Mitchell. My name's Monica Williams. I reside in the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia. I have about a year experience in help desk, but now I'm trying to, get my certs and whatnot. It was told to me, I already actually answered this question. Since like networking, A+ and security all build on top of each other, would you recommend me to have a firm understanding of Security Plus to get my Networking Plus and A+?
I think that the strategy that CompTIA has laid out is a good one, because as you mentioned, they do sort of build on each other. You start with the A+, you get the fundamentals, you understand a little bit about operating systems, a little bit about networking, and a little bit about security. And then the Network Plus really does build a lot on top of that. You go from understanding the network at a desktop level to understanding the network at a network level, which is incredibly important. And as I've mentioned many times on these study groups, when you get into IT security, you really are building this on a huge, very important foundation of networking. You can't work in IT security and really do any type of planning or implementation unless you really understand what's happening at the network level. Now, that doesn't mean that for your entry-level certifications, you should follow that exact path, because I will tell you, when I got those 3 certifications, I got my Security Plus first, then I got my Network Plus second, then I got my A+ third. but I was in a different position. I needed those to be in that order. Other people need them to be in the reverse order. It just depends on what you're trying to accomplish. That's where I think that most people should really focus their efforts is what do I need to do next? There certainly should be a long-term perspective. Eventually, I'd like to get into security. I really love to get into cybersecurity one day, but often we need to look to see
my RMF certification, my risk management framework certification. That's my long term.
Perfect.
That's what I'm really after.
But to get to that point, there needs to be, what do you do next? And a help desk position is a great example. Maybe after the help desk position, getting into server administration, database administration, network administration, security of some kind, maybe a security operations center. We should figure out where the next step is, figure out what we need to get into that role, and then that's what we should follow to be able to make that happen.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Appreciate the call. That's when I think it's a struggle because, as I mentioned before, there's not a single path. Everybody can get to where they need to go. And maybe we're all even ending up at the same place, but everybody can take a different path to get there. When I was working as a systems engineer at Palo Alto, everybody I was working with were kind of that senior systems engineer. We were all sort of doing the same job, but in different parts of the country. But we all took a very different path to finally get to that particular role. It was interesting how we got to that path, and everybody does. So that's why I mentioned that is don't worry so much on, am I doing this the right way? The way that you're going to do it is going to be the right way as long as you get to where you're trying to go. You don't have to worry about the lines in the sand. Let's go to the 208 area code. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Dennis. I'm calling from Idaho.
Hey, Dennis. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Hey, yeah, I just took the A+. I'm a student. I've taken some web security before, and I just took the CompTIA from home here at my desk where I'm watching you online, and it was quite an experience. There's, just as you say, a lot of visual and best-case scenarios, just a ton of things. I've watched all your videos for months now. I'm actually a student with WVU, and they have a ton of material as well. And I studied, and I took the test, came just barely finished in time. And, I don't consider myself an unintelligent person, but, I just barely missed it. They wanted a 670, and I came in just a few points below that. My instructor says, just retake it again. And the cool part about being a student is they cover the cost.
Nice.
So I can take it again, no problem. No harm, no foul.
That's the beauty of it. Like I said earlier, the worst thing that happens when you don't make a passing score is you just take it again. You just study up and go through it again, and then you actually pass it. As I mentioned, you only fail if you end up not taking it again. If you just stop taking them, then you finally failed it, but you really haven't until that point. Now, you took it at home, and then people ask this all the time. There's obviously a very different experience taking it at home than taking it at a testing center. What were the parts of taking it at home that you found to be the most remarkable?
Honestly, when we started the test, obviously they want to see around the room, the webcam, everything has to be clear. Somebody's watching you the whole time, and they had a lot of visual kind of layouts and just best case scenarios. They had tablets all over a building, and you had to decide, what's the best way to configure this. They give you a list of criteria. So-and-so wants to log in here, so-and-so's here, she's got a tablet, emails, this is what needs to go on, and they want you to kind of lay out all the technologies, what standards, the logins, and how everything works. And I think I did okay on those portions. Obviously, I've studied a lot of your notes and a lot of that stuff, and a lot of that kept coming back up. They're very helpful. I absolutely wouldn't have done it without it. And just a lot of, I think the ones that I really had struggles with were just really technical, like printer things, just weird questions asked in a way that I wasn't sure, because they asked for best answers, and I'm like, I kept finding myself, knowing good answers, knowing, hey, here's how I would do it, but what's the best way? And I kept tripping on that. So
that's good though, because now we often say, and we had some of those in the study group today, that they were going to ask you what is the best. You kind of do need to know when you're answering those questions why all of the other answers were the worst of the choices. So it's a different kind of answer to go through. You don't need to know which one is right. You need to know why all the other ones were wrong, which I think is a much more difficult question to answer. If you had to take the test again in a testing center versus taking it at home, which one would you take?
Well, I'll be honest, my 10-year-old daughter was in the other room blasting the TV the whole time, so a test center might be good, or in privacy without her, friends coming over. Actually, she wanted friends over, and I said, don't let them in, and then I could have swore her friends were over, but they will not let you up from the desk. There's no drinks, anything. I asked them, they said, you can't have a can of soda. If it's anything, it's a clear bottle of water that we can see through. And that's something I'm used to because WGU is an online school. All the proctoring and tests are online, so it's very similar. The difficulty for me was the feedback afterwards. They let me know what section and area I had missed on those, but it didn't tell me which question and then the correct answer. So for me, I'm kind of like, man, which question was that? So I'm looking back and I'm like, how do I study to retake it? Kind of a little gray area there, so I'm not sure.
That's pretty standard with the CompTIA exams. It's been that way forever. All they really give you is that you missed a question in section 2.1, network protocols. That's all they tell you. You don't tell you what question that was. They don't tell you what you answered, what to write it. They give you no feedback other than keep studying section 2.1. I guess that's all you can really go with.
Exactly.
To have those things there. Well, that's fantastic. Congratulations on passing that piece. Now, are you taking the Core 2 next?
I am, Core 1 and Core 2, and they say to take those back to back too to keep them fresh. And I've already purchased study notes and going to be prepared for that. I think I'm more ready for Core 2 than Core 1 anyway.
I appreciate that.
And speeds and yeah, absolutely.
I hear that from other people too. I think it's we have such a familiarity with Windows. We've been using it for so long. We've got a comfort level with going into the control panel. It's a little bit more familiar to people than pulling the cover off the computer and getting into the insides. I think you're probably not alone in that perspective, and maybe it will be easier from that perspective too.
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Well, best of luck with that. Let us know how it goes.
I definitely appreciate your materials, and I haven't found any better resources out there. And honestly, in conjunction with what the school's offered and the materials, I'm amazed. It's a wealth of information. There really is a lot of information to learn, and so glad to be having it. Yeah, appreciate all your materials and your good hard work. And these study sessions are fantastic. So listen to them at home in the gym and driving around. So always a good opportunity and good mediums.
I appreciate it. It sounds like you got the right strategy in mind. Appreciate the call, Dennis.
Yes, sir. Alrighty. Bye.
That's one I think is valuable, being able to do this at home. Obviously, CompTIA rolled this home testing service out right at the beginning of the year. Very timely. I think they probably accelerated their plans to do so because they've been talking about doing it for well over a year before that. So I think it really took the COVID to really make that happen and all of those things occur. And as people are mentioning in the chat room, they are very particular about you taking it at home. Your room has to be set up a certain way. You have to make sure that only one screen is being used. And if you have another monitor, it has to be unplugged and they have to see that it is unplugged. And as they mentioned in the chat room, you can't cover your mouth. You can't just put your hand right here and think about a question because they will send you a message on your screen telling you to take your hand away from your mouth because you might be saying what the question is and recording it somewhere else for later. So that's one of those that people get a little thrown by because a lot of people like to think about what to do. Nope, can't think about it. You can think about it, but not with your hand on your mouth, I guess. It's very particular. And you do have to have an environment where you can't get any interruptions. I don't know that anywhere has a perfect setup at home, but you might be able to get pretty close. Testing center for me is probably a better choice, but there's advantages and disadvantages, and a lot of people didn't have the choice of a testing center near them, so being able to do it at home is just fantastic. A great opportunity for them. Other questions in the chat room. When is all of 601 going to be released? I guess you're referring to my SY0601 Security Plus training course. I just released the first 6 videos yesterday. I have another group that's in the can ready to be edited that I'm working on now. I have, there is probably the total is going to be, I think I looked at the other day, it's about 170 videos. It is 33% larger than the 501. This is a massive certification exam, which is why I tell people, go take the 501. Don't take the what are you doing? Don't take the 601. It doesn't matter. Take the 501. You're much better off at doing that. So however long it takes for me to record 176 videos, I think it is, that's how long it's going to be. If I had to extrapolate it out, it's going to be weeks of time creating all those videos. They're ready to go. They're sitting there ready for me to record them. So the recording part's the relatively easy part. It has taken months just to create the course, but the course notes are done because the course is done. Now I have to create the video that is sitting there waiting for me. So I don't have a time frame. I never have a formal time frame. It is they will be done whenever they're done. That gives me the time to do them correctly, to do them with the quality that I want them to have. If I set some arbitrary date and time, then I'm pushing for no good reason. So that's just one of those things. Yeah, you don't want an unedited version of it. It'd be a mess and boring too. So I like to cut it down and get it just right to have it there. And the reality is when I shoot the videos, the final video, if the final video is 10 minutes long, it usually takes about 1.5 times that to shoot. So a 10-minute video took me 25 minutes to shoot. So that's the plus and minus. When I sit down for a shooting session, I also have to worry about my voice. I have to worry about being fresh through all of it. So usually I'm shooting about 5 videos or 6 videos at a time, sometimes more, sometimes fewer. But I'll shoot 5, I'll edit 5, I'll post 5, I'll sit down and shoot another 5 and edit 5 and post. So that's the process. So now I'm in that process. We just keep going back and forth through it, and you'll start to see these chunks of videos get updated and released to the web. So that's another good reason to subscribe and hit the bell on the YouTube channel, because as soon as I post them, you'll get notified. Here's some more videos. They get added to the exam, the 601 exam playlist. So everything's there. The 501 will be around until July 31st. You've got until July. You've got more than half a year to take the 501. So they're giving you, normally they only give you 6 months. With the 601, they're giving you 9 months to be able to take it before it goes away. You have plenty of time. In fact, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you take the 501. It's an easier exam. It gives you the same certification. It's good for 3 years after you pass it. Why wouldn't you take that one? I still haven't found anybody who needs to take the 601, but some people feel like they should. I don't know why. Take the 501. There's not even a book available for the 601 right now. I'm not sure why you would study for that one. Take the 501. You'll be much happier about it. So let's talk quickly before we finish up about strategy. Question in the chat room. How many videos do you suggest we watch a day to get you equipped for the A+? It's really kind of a generic question for A+, Network Plus, Security Plus. Everybody's a little bit different. Everybody has a different schedule. Everybody has different time available in the day. Everybody learns at a different pace. Some people can just watch the entire course all the way through. They got it. They'll go take the exam. That's kind of rare, but it does happen. Other people take a video a day. They go through the topics in the video. Then they read in their book on the topics associated with that video. They go to the exam objectives and they go through each one of those objectives to make sure they really understand what was listed there. Maybe they do some Q&A or other things associated with it. And then they got it. Then they go to the next video. So I guess it really depends on your style and what you want to do with it. Everybody's a little bit different. With some people, books looks better. With some people, videos works better. With some people, Q&A works better. Some people like to work in a group. Some people like to work alone. Some people work better at night. Some people get up before anybody else gets up and they work in the morning. So I guess it just depends on what you're doing and how you would work through all of those. I guess that really is the important part. Lastly, in the chat room, Setting up a wireless access point in mixed mode over one mode. Are you referring to mixed mode being BG or GN? Or are you talking about 2.4 gigahertz versus 5 gigahertz? Because those are two different things. Obviously, setting up an access point and turning on both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz is fine. Those obviously aren't going to have any interference between the two. And setting up mixed mode where you would allow 802.11g to connect to 802.11n is not an interference problem as much as it has to slow down a little bit with the mixed mode to allow the different headers to work properly. It's not an interference problem as much as it could possibly be a throughput problem. These days, we're kind of getting past that point, though. There's not a lot of G left. Everybody's starting to roll out their AC or even higher. And you're probably maybe only having a few N devices that are connecting. Not much of a slowdown you have to worry about. The newer AX that's coming out that people are using are probably going to make everything just as fast as it possibly can be. It's not going to be a big deal anymore. But that's one of those that's not an interference problem as much as it is a throughput issue, and hardly anybody is in a position where they have to worry about the minor throughput differences between a mixed mode and a non-mixed mode. So that I think you're fine. And worry about all those pieces. Well, that takes us to the end of a marathon session, but we'll do another one in 2 days. Come on back on Thursday. We'll do the Core 2 A+ study group. I've already written all the questions. They're already sitting there ready to go. I just need to wait till Thursday. And you're going to wait till Thursday too, and we'll do this whole thing all over again. Come back for that one. We'll be glad to have you come for the first hour where I'll ask you the questions, and then we'll do another after show while I'll open up the phone lines. We'll go through that piece as well. I thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. Thanks for your ongoing support on the website. Could not thank you enough for your support of the course notes, the success bundles, the practice exams, and all of those things. It's what allows us to keep this whole craziness going, and we just love it. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. Appreciate you being here. We'd love to see you back here on Thursday, and we'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Thanks, everybody.